radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah. How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Today's Monday, December 14th, 2020. Let's do this, man. We are 349 days into the new year. Only 17 days left. Holy smokes. We're getting close, dude. Getting close. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planets. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? Hope you had a great weekend. We'll be talking about all of that in just a minute for sure. What a great week we've got lined up here on Fade to Black. The rundown. Tonight, Micah Hanks. Oh, man. Micah Hanks is here. We're going to be talking about the recent leaked F18 UFO UAP image that hit the internet a couple of weeks ago, maybe even before that. We'll be talking about that tonight. And, of course, Micah is a host, is a researcher, an intellectual, a historian, and he's also a journalist for The Debrief. And if you didn't know that, you know that now. That's a man of many talents. And during the show tonight, I'm just wondering what kind of socks Micah Hanks is wearing tonight. Hopefully, they're holiday socks. Tomorrow night, right here, John Burroughs and James Worrow will join us. They are here to announce their new book, The Weaponization of Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, the Rendlesham Forest UAP Incident 40 years later. That's tomorrow night. And this is what's interesting about this book. It's a great book. It's a great read. Highly recommend it. We'll be talking about that tomorrow night. But I have the honor of writing the foreword to this book. And it releases on the 16th. Today's the 14th. Tomorrow's the 15th. The release date is on Wednesday, the 16th. So there you go. And then Wednesday night, Billy Carson is here to announce the publishing of his new book, Woke Doesn't Mean Broke. And strange coinkydink, I also wrote the foreword to this book. and it just so happens, two different friends, two different, people, but both books are releasing at the same time, and I just happened to write the foreword to both of them. Very cool, very strange feeling that this is all happening in the same week. It wasn't intentional. I certainly had nothing to do with it, but it's pretty cool. Okay, so that'll be Wednesday night. Billy Carson is here. Thursday night, of course, is another Fader night. And Jimmy, why does your hair look wet? What? It looks like it always does. It's dry. Oh, you're talking about that fancy, that fancy, what did they call it in, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? What was that stuff that, I forget what he called it. Dapper Dan? Wasn't that it? I got to get me my Dapper Dan. Maybe it's my Dapper Dan that is in there. I'm trying to think. What was that called? You remember that? Pomade. Oh, man. That's the problem with having Twitter right in front of me and stuff like that pops up. Thursday night's another Fader night with open lines all night long. Now, I am 12 days into COVID-19. I am far from over it. I haven't gotten retested yet. That'll be happening on Wednesday. But man, oh, geez. It's just gnarly. It's just gnarly. And I was speaking with a friend of mine today, and it's like, an old friend of mine I've known for 35 years. So what's going on? How you doing? How's the family? I said, honestly, I said, I feel like crap, but I, just like everybody else, I don't have the luxury of worrying about it. I gotta work. I gotta feed my family. I gotta do things. I can't worry about it. I don't have a choice. And that's where I'm at. So the show goes on tonight, tomorrow night, and for the rest of everything. The only reason why I missed last week on those days is because I was down. I'm running at about 50%. Okay. All right. I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But let's actually just get this show cracking. I'm excited. Micah Hanks is here tonight. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Micah Hanks at Micah Hanks on Twitter, and you should. And you can also follow The Debrief. I think it's at The Debrief, or is it Debrief Media? I've got it up there in Twitter, and of course, you Fader Knots can pop it up there for me, and I will retweet it as soon as I can. All right, you can email throughout the show, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. All the chat rooms are open, Spreaker, KGRA. Hello to everybody on Facebook. Hello to everybody on YouTube. Hello to everybody over on the Bunker Cam. I think we're over on UBN, United Broadcasting Network. Hello to everybody at KGRA and TalkStream Live and all the way down the list, right? Okay, tune in. And it's going to be a great week. All right, and we will get through all of this together. And there you go. Let me get straight to the breaking news. The first doses of a COVID-19 vaccine have been given to the American public less than a year after the disease was first spotted in the United States. 37 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, have received their shipments today, with the rest of the country to get theirs tomorrow. In the meantime, thousands of Americans are dying from the virus every day. On Monday afternoon today, the national death toll from coronavirus-related reasons surpassed the 300,000, or about one American death every 60 seconds. About 2.9 million doses of the vaccine either have been or will be received nationwide this week. That's enough to start vaccinating 1.45 million people. Apparently, they're holding back another 2.9 million doses because it's a two-parter vaccination, two-parter. You get the first one now, you get the second injection in 2 months. That's crazy. That's what's going on. Reserve your comments. I'm just reporting the news. All right. Google and its services went down for about an hour today in a massive outage that prevented many people from watching YouTube, no cat videos, accessing their Google Docs, or sending email on Gmail. The outage also made Google Classroom temporarily unavailable, preventing many students from learning remotely from accessing their classes. A little after 8 a.m. Eastern Time, most of Google's services came back online. The company's workspace status dashboard had been read across the board, with every single Google service indicating an outage. Later this morning, they turned green, indicating that they were back and operating normally. All right, U.S. officials suspect that Russian-linked hackers were behind the recent data breach of multiple federal agencies, including the Departments of Homeland Security, Treasury and Commerce, and are continuing to investigate the incident that was revealed yesterday. Moscow has been linked to several recent breaches, including last week's hack of FireEye, an attack that compromised the so-called red team tools it uses to protect clients, including government customers. The recent hacks were likely carried out by a Russian-affiliated group known as APT-29. The investigation continues. Let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today, AC/DC's bassist Cliff Williams. Today is 71. Absolutely incredible. Firehouse frontman CJ Snare. Today is 56. Now, I'm going to say this. First off, CJ's a great singer. Great singer. Second, Firehouse, great man. Third, how many songs have you tapped your toes to when it comes to Firehouse? Firehouse. Man, that was an amazing band. At the edge of everything, too. I think that, it was like 1990, 91, 92, right as grunge is coming in, and Firehouse just had that short run of a few years. But, man, what a string of hits. Great band. Still playing today. On this day in history, OTD 1900. German physicist Max Planck publishes his groundbreaking study of the effect of radiation on a black body substance, and the quantum theory of modern physics is born. 1900. Fader fact. In Warsaw's Gruba Kaska water plant, there are 8 clams, live clams, 8 clams with sensors attached to their shells. If the clams close because they don't like the taste of the water, the city's water supply is automatically shut off. Yep. Need to get them clams into L.A. That's what we need. We need them clams. Need them clams in Los Angeles. That is vetted. That is your Fader fact. Tonight, Micah Hanks is here. Micah Hanks is going to tell us about the recent leaked F18 UFO UAP image. We posted this last week. It was leaked just recently, of course, taken worldwide by the debrief. And it's an interesting photograph taken from the cockpit. Pilot took it with his cell phone. I published the images on social media, and I haven't gotten that kind of reaction out of an image in quite a long time. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know how many comments. Couldn't even read through them all. So we're going to be talking about that and the purported second image that is out there that hasn't been leaked just yet. So all of that tonight with Micah Hanks. Tomorrow night, John Burroughs is here, along with his co-author, James Worrow. We are going to talk about their new book, The Weaponization of an Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, the Rendlesham Forest UAP Incident 40 years later. The book releases Kindle on Wednesday, the 16th. Wednesday night, Billy Carson is here. He's going to be announcing also the publishing of his new book, Woke Doesn't Mean Broke. Thursday night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. All right. Some of you are wondering how I'm getting through the show tonight, how I am going to get through the show this week. There's only one thing that can get me out of this lack of energy. River Moon Coffee. That is no joke. River Moon Coffee, rivermooncoffee.com. Makers of the Fade to Black blend. You need to get over there, check it out. Also, head over to their Amazon store as well. And when you go to the website, the promo code F2B blend will get you 15% off of your entire order today. You need to get some Faded Black blend or the Game Changer blend, which is it's a lighter, milder version. But yeah, Faded Black blend. You got to go Doc. All right. Let me hit this coffee. Nothing could prepare me for the crazy breaking news that flooded the world after I left the air last Thursday night. Here I am trying to recover from COVID-19, and that ain't easy. I'm trying to find the energy to make sure my family is fed and taken care of. I'm just trying to get out of bed, folks. When everything in our world right now over at Casa Day Church has been flipped upside down. Entire family's got COVID, right? And all I want to do is sleep. That's all I want to do. I have to fight the urge, right? I have to fight the urge. I've got to get up, get vertical, and get things done. Have to. Somebody's got to do it. I mean, what choice do I have? Well, actually, I have none. You see, I'm in the same boat as millions of other people who have come down with this illness, and we are largely left on our own. That's right. I test positive for COVID. I literally get an email from the testing company. Well, there's nothing that can be done, right? Drink lots of liquids, get some rest, and we'll check in with you later. That's it. No prescriptions, none of this, none of that. If you have trouble breathing, go to the hospital. Literally, that's it. You're on your own. So I've got to figure out a way to get things done. That being said, this weekend, which actually started on Friday, I was trying to keep up with the headlines. And I'm trying to do this while I'm sick, right? And I just got other things on my mind. And the headline started. Started with the Supreme Court of the United States striking down the Texas Trump case in dramatic fashion. That went down on Friday. Absolute insanity, watching social media light up and all of the media organizations light up and Twitter. It was just crazy. And then there was the announcement of the FDA approving the COVID vaccine on the same day. How are we supposed to, our blood pressure, how are we supposed to cope with this kind of stuff? Right? We had the demonstrations going on in D.C. I could sit here and list all of it, but there's not enough time to list everything here and now. But here's the deal. I didn't care about any of it. I didn't. I just don't have the energy to even think about it. That's how crazy COVID is. That's it. I just don't have the energy. I'm just watching this. I'm just reading my things and people calling and the texts and the emails. And then I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care. Every ounce of energy that I have must be spent on getting this show done this week, right? That's the prep of everything over the week. And that's, I don't have any energy for anything else. Normally, my energy levels are endless. I can work 20, 22, 23 hours a day. I can rest. I have no sleep. I can go. I can tap into my energy, any one of them, by the way, anytime. Right now, those days are gone. I ain't got it. And I don't know when they're going to return. You know, and I've read everybody out there. Man, it took me 2 months to get my energy back. That scares me. It took me 3 months to get my energy back. That scares me. But in my fever-induced COVID madness that I find my mind in right now, something hit me about all of these conspiracy theories that are floating around right now. And it is this. Here we have this flood of voter fraud theories. Stop the steal, whatever. Too many to list. And I'm watching the post from everyone screaming about these widespread fraud. And those same people are saying that the vaccine is part of the new world order to take over the world. Right? What? Now, even for me, one of the biggest conspiracy lovers in the world, me, I can't understand where this is coming from. I want to connect the dots. I really do. But right now, I can't. The cognitive dissonance that is happening is crazy. This country has fallen in love with conspiracy theory right now. And the majority of the United States can't handle it. They can't. There are too many conspiracies. And they are overlapping and contradicting themselves. And so these people that are spreading the conspiracy theories don't even realize they're not professionals. They're not professional conspiracy theorists. They don't realize that they are contradicting themselves because they don't know. They don't know how to deal with the conspiracy theory. They don't. You see, a good professional conspiracy theorist like myself knows how to deal with this stuff. And for us, it's just a walk in the park. It is. For the vast majority of the U.S., this is all brand new. That's right. They have only been exposed to all of this over the last year. And they have made the grave mistake of going all in. All in on everything without taking a look at the facts or even coming close to being rational or objective. You see, it's like this. I've been prepared for the times that we are going through right now for almost 45 years. Since the first time I listened to side one of Rush's 2112. That's right. Although it's hard to believe, but 2112 was released in March of, wait for it, 1976. Side one spelled it out for all of us, then and now, that the man was going to take control of the minds of the masses. That being different, a true individual, was no longer accepted. This great country of ours, the United States of America, is great for one reason and one reason only: that we are all different. Rush showed me that in 1976 and showed me again this weekend after I listened to side one of 2112 at full volume in the bunker. We, as a nation, cannot lose sight of this fact. 2020 turned out to be the perfect storm. Billions of people all around the world forced into their homes, scared to death of an invisible pandemic, their eyes and ears bombarded with the craziest news and conspiracy theories by the media and their friends and peers, pummeled into a belief system that no one could have imagined even 12 short months ago. So, even now, as I struggle with COVID and its fever-induced dementia, I refuse to be taken down. That's right. I'm not going to fall for the hundreds of crazy-ass conspiracies that don't make any sense. Because I know that. Right now, as I speak these words, someone is trying to mess with my head, and I won't let them. But most don't have the luxury of having a lack of energy like I do. That's right. Most don't have COVID. So for those who have swallowed the red pill and have headed down into the darkness, take my advice. Go and listen to side 1 of 2112. Be different. Be the rebel that you are. Fight the system. Be the individual that you know you always were. Don't fall for the us versus them. If someone or something is telling you that your friends or family are evil because they are different and you buy into it, you are part of the problem, not the solution. If you have any further questions or you have any doubts on what you may be being manipulated with right now, go and watch the documentary, The Social Dilemma. Do it. Everything is spelled out for you in black and white. Then, of course, when you're done with that, go and listen to side 1 of 2112. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Tonight, very special guest Micah Hanks is here. We're going to be talking about the recent leaked F18 UFO UAP image that was brought out into the public by The Debrief. TheDebrief.org is the website. Tomorrow night, John Burroughs and James Worrow join us to announce their new book, The Weaponization of an Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, the Rendlesham Forest UAP Incident 40 years later. Wednesday night, Billy Carson is here. Thursday night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. I'm your host, Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. I'll be right back with tonight's guest, Micah Hanks. Stay with me.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. Introducing the Game Changer blend from Rivermoon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all Rivermoon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com. Go Beckley Tappy.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. GetTheTea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years, and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's GetTheTea.com. GetTheTea.com. The tea that makes you go.
Permanent industrial glue impossible to remove? Not anymore, because Handyman Formula by D-Bond is a patented chemical adhesive remover. It's used in the building and home maintenance industry, but now it's available for your home use, for your DIY projects. Unglue stickers, silicone rubber, labels, price tags, flex tape, weather glue, liquid nail, even 3M 5200. And it dissolves graffiti. Yeah, graffiti. Handyman Formula by D-Bond works, and it's safe to use on most surfaces. No need to call a professional. Don't get out the pliers and blowtorch. Just apply a little Handyman Formula by D-Bond and wait 90 seconds, then quickly and easily pull the items apart. Get unstuck. Visit dbondhandymanformula.com. That's dbondhandymanformula.com, or call 561-575-4200. Handyman Formula by D-Bond.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black, your father's radio show. On the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Micah Hanks is here. Tomorrow night, John Burroughs. Wednesday night, Billy Carson. Thursday night, Fader night. Open lines all night long. But tonight, Micah joins us to discuss the recent leaked image from an F18 pilot of a UFO, UAP. Don't know what it is. It was taken from the cockpit of a plane back in 2018, somewhere off the east coast of the United States. We'll find out about all of that tonight. Micah, of course, is a writer, podcaster, history fanatic, science enthusiast, and philosophy junkie. His areas of focus include current events, cultural studies, technology, unexplained phenomena, and everything else that interests us like nice socks. And this is the thing. He has appeared on numerous radio and television programs, including Coast to Coast, Caravan to Midnight with John B. Wells, History Channel's Guts and Bolts, CNN Radio, and, of course, right here on Fade to Black. He's the author of several books, including The Ghost Rockets, Mysticism and the Molecule, The Search for Sentient Intelligence from Other Worlds, Reynolds Mansion, An Invitation to the Past, and the UFO Singularity. He currently hosts the Micah Hanks program, formerly known as The Gralien Report. I will never change my commercial with Micah. That is forever frozen in history. The Middle Theory podcast and the 7 Ages Audio Journal podcast, and writes for the debrief.org website. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Micah Hanks. Micah, good evening.
Well, it is good to be here, sir, and you're looking good, by the way, in light of current events, so I'm glad you're on the mend there, buddy.
Do I look COVID-ish?
Not really. Yeah, ladies and gents at home, I have the courtesy of being able to see Jimmy Church in his element right now, and he, of course, can see into my bunker as well. We always keep a direct line between the bunkers, though, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We do that. And so what you're saying is then I normally look COVID-ish then.
No. I just think that you have one of those unique immune systems, and I'm very thankful for that, by the way, because I know that, again, a lot of people have been affected by this. I think that we saw last Wednesday the new all-time high as far as, losses in a single day, higher than 9/11, higher than D-Day.
Yes.
That didn't put it into a historical context for you. I don't know what will.
For those out there, this is the truth, Micah. For those out there that haven't gotten it, I'd say, it's just a cold, right? It's not a big deal. They will change their tune, right? They will change their tune immediately once they go through, because I was very public about what I went through, and this is the thing. And everybody that got it, I had heard these reports, but I didn't take it seriously. I went from 1 to 100 in about 30 minutes. It was just like a barnstorm. I could not believe how quickly and how I felt. And when you go through that, you start thinking the strange crap, man.
Oh, yeah.
You just go right there. And I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned by it. I don't wish it on anybody. And that's the truth. That's the bottom line. It is indescribable. Indescribable. Yeah. I'm 12 days in. Wednesday will be number 14. I will get retested then, and I'm hoping that it'll come back negative. But I'm just running at 50%. 50%. I'm not at 60. I'm not. I'm running at 50%, and I'm looking forward to some sense of normalcy. I just don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, but you and I both know this, okay? From our background in radio, you don't have bad days in radio. And so fortunately, you sound 100%, buddy. And it's good, good to be here with you.
That is the truth. I remember so many years ago, somebody had said to me in broadcast, said that theatrics is half of the sale. Right? That's it. Yep. That's it. There are no bad days. No matter what's going on in your life, the show must go on, and that's it. That you are always healthy. That's it. That's it. Theatrics is half of the sale. So, unfortunately, it didn't work for me last week, but I tried. So,
hey, you gave it. It was a valiant effort. But again, I was thrilled tonight. During the break, there's Jimmy, showing me guitars on the camera like he always does. In fact, I can see a bunch of them right now. So, he's playing with his guitars during the break. We know he's okay. At least he's on the path toward okay again.
Yeah. And that's the one thing I can say. I know that, and we'll certainly move on from this, but that I know that so many people have been affected by this to the extreme measures, and it is harsh. It's harsh. For me and my family, we didn't go into the really dark areas of this. And I'm very appreciative and thankful for my family in that we have always taken supplements, right? And tried to eat right and tried to do all the right things just because you're supposed to take care of your body, right? Yes. This is the last thing that you would expect, that you were thankful for taking supplements, right? And eating right. Oh man. So that's it. We're very blessed. So now, Micah, I want to, I actually want to start with the debrief, because it seemed to, for those of us in the community that have been following Tim McMillan and MJ and yourself, we've been following the work, but the debrief just seemed to pop up out of nowhere. Are you dealing with the attention that the debrief has gotten over the last couple of weeks?
Oh, absolutely. But the funny paradox there is, everybody else is like, what is all this? Where did this come from?
Right.
And I'm thinking, well, I've been dealing with this for more than a year now. Because the truth is, let's back up to 2017 here for just a moment. That so-called shot heard around the world, it was really that for so many of us. But guys like you and I, and again, really, I think MJ and Tim too, we have followed this topic for a long time. I really got involved with UFOs more than a decade ago, I think. And I was invited to start blogging and writing a column for the print edition of UFO magazine. Now, up until that time, I wasn't as involved with UFOs. And when I had the invitation, I thought, I think I could contribute to this topic. And I remember doing an interview after the book Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule came out. And it was Benjamin Grundy of Mysterious Universe who asked me at that time. He says, what's your next book going to be? And I said, I would like to contribute something to UFOs. Boy, I never knew I was stepping in it, when I said that. So anyway, fast forward to 2017. At that point, I'd been following this for a very long time, trying to look at everything with relation to future science and future technologies, looking at current technological trends and where they may be headed and what that could tell us about the operative, aspects of what UFOs may be or might represent. When 2017 happened and we realized that the U.S. government is still involved in looking at this, and for the most logical reasons one could imagine, because there's an apparent threat potential. Yeah, of course, a lot of us began to look at this and, kind of, sharpen our focus a little. And so at that very moment, for me personally, I thought, okay, now is the time that we have to raise the bar on the discussion and how we frame the debate, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So It was probably I guess it was the summer of 2019. Tim McMillan, again, a lot of people are equally mystified by my good buddy Tim McMillan. They say, where did this guy come from? Just out of the blue, out of the blue, he just kind of shows up and starts writing about UFOs. And I'll tell people, go back in the podcast catalog. You'll hear him on my show in February of 2019, and we almost barely even touch on UFOs. We talk about psychology, missing persons in national parks, things like this. At the very end, I think we just touched on UFOs very briefly, but Tim and I, of course, became fast friends and stayed in touch. About 6 months or so later, we started really kind of talking about maybe wanting to do something different, but Tim was already branching out and, publishing in traditional magazines and online publications, Popular Mechanics, Vice, The War Zone.
Mm-hmm.
Me, on the other hand, I was still kind of over in the UFO camp with things, not really ready to get into the mainstream per se, but still trying to think, how do we raise the bar on the discussion, similar to what Tim's doing, but keep it in the sphere of the UFO topic, really, that we have known and that we have come to love, but also be mystified, even terrified by maybe at times. And one evening, I remember this idea kind of struck like lightning. And usually when I'm going through a process of starting something new, I think about it for weeks. Ask Tim or MJ. I'll stew on it sometimes for months. But that night, the domain was purchased. His wonderful evening was interrupted by a phone call from yours truly. I said, Tim, I've got this idea. But it was actually kind of put on the back burner there afterward because there were so many other things going on. We revisit the idea again in the spring of this year because really what happened was the pandemic strikes. Everybody's stuck at home. A lot of people have got a lot more time on their hands. And I remember on my birthday, Tim and I had been talking on the telephone. He calls me back 2 days later and says, remember that idea? He says, what if we really tried to do something with this, reach out to some potential investors, all kinds of stuff, So MJ Benias immediately becomes involved. We took it from there. But again, for people who are like, this just came out of the blue, where did you guys come from with this? It's been a long, long, long time in the works on our end of things. And so really, we're just now sort of seeing something come to fruition that the mutual vision of MJ and Tim and yours truly, putting this together in a format where we are not just talking about UFOs. We want to touch on, disruptive science and technology, defense, space, especially with the institution of Space Force. Mm-hmm. Artificial intelligence is a big one for me. Planetary defense, all these issues, they really need the proper focus and attention that they deserve. But chief among those, UAP, man, we are entering a new era with that subject. And so we want to try and raise the bar on that, just like that original objective, that idea that Tim and I talked about and have been talking about now for about a year. So really, that's the long story short, and it's a much longer story than I think a lot of people realize.
Well, do you find that each one of these subjects, and you look at the Debrief website, and you look at, the navigation buttons across the top, that everything is connected anyway, right?
Yeah, they really are. And Jimmy, that's a really great point because, again, I have for years talked with, for instance, artificial intelligence experts and asked them, so what's the connection there? Do you see a connection between AI and UFOs? And the AI experts will often say that they see no connection. Most of them aren't even really interested in, the UAP subject or UFOs at all. And for me, I've always seen a potential connection there. But the main one is that if AI comes to fruition and an actual machine superintelligence emerges from that, something that is both autonomous but also capable of surpassing human intelligence and our innate biological capabilities, humankind suddenly runs the risk of being kicked off of, the totem pole which we occupy right now. Similarly, we could say that if, again, let's say that UAP does represent extraterrestrial technology, and that, of course, there are operators behind that. Yet again, we are looking at a situation where humans may be forced to have to reconcile with an intelligence in the presence of which we are no longer the top dog. Yet again, here's another one, too. Well, go ahead.
But the point that you're making that I think is as valid as it gets is no matter what an intelligent civilization may be, if they are getting here, they went through the AI evolution, right? And what is here visiting us is probably an artificial intelligence. It's their representative because we're going to go through the same steps when we reach out to the stars, right?
Absolutely. I put this out on Twitter a while back. I said, if again, we can assume that the creation of artificial intelligence is an eventuality here on Earth. And if we assume that that might occur before we are capable of, I mean, we can already travel into space, but guys, we are really, really limited on how far out there we can go. It's a real chore just to get to the moon, okay? Let alone to the nearest actual planet in our, planetary neighborhood, our solar system. So again, if let's say AI comes to fruition before interstellar space travel, if that's ever actually something we can do, if eventually that occurs, we're likely to have AI first. And therefore it stands to reason, just like you're saying, any significantly advanced civilization that's far beyond us, somewhere out there capable of traveling here, they will likely have AI that far surpasses anything akin to the machine intelligence that we know here on Earth. So yes, to me, to understand the UFO issue, we kind of have to look at things like artificial intelligence and maybe other things too, genetic engineering, maybe even advanced physics concepts, and even stuff like time travel should be at least entertained without getting too far out there, because we haven't really even reached any kind of consensus on what the UFO phenomenon represents. But again, to your point, we're trying to frame the debate in terms of things that we can study here and things which the UFO phenomenon may have more relationship with, technologically speaking, than most, technologists and scientists would give it credit for.
Do you think that what we are seeing out there, millions of reports, things that I have seen as well, could be things that don't necessarily have a pilot, inside of some living being, but would just be nothing more than a drone or some of the things that we're sending to Mars or to Saturn or Jupiter or to the moon? That's the way we're exploring our own solar system. Wouldn't we then expect the same thing from an intelligent civilization exploring our solar system?
Certainly. Again, if we actually look at some of the classic UFO cases, the Gorman dogfight, right? Up
Yes.
there.
Mhm.
This is right from the Blue Book files. But if we actually look at the purported UAP in that case, I mean, it would have probably been an object too small to house an occupant, unless it's a really small occupant. I mean, I don't know, maybe they were really small pilots, but it seems to suggest, right?
Right.
Images from science fiction films come to mind here, but maybe the Men in Black films, you remember the guy's face pops up and there's a little tiny alien sitting there driving, yeah. But I mean, it very well may be that there are really tiny drivers, but I would find it more probable that we, in many cases, are dealing with reconnaissance drones or some other kind of a technology that is controlled either autonomously itself via AI or something else, or it is remotely controlled from elsewhere and doesn't have to have any kind of occupants.
Now let's get straight to it. This image that the debris whipped out on the world. Okay, we'll get into the image specifically in just a second. But how did the debris get the image? And did you guys start to vet its chain of custody?
Yes. The image, again, I've got a couple of pages of notes here, and I'd like to go down everything because, I mean, I've got everything that I think we know about the image up until this point. And again, I'll just say right here I mean, I don't want to give any spoilers or anything, but I'm not convinced that the photograph is necessarily revelatory. I have a strong suspicion there's a very mundane explanation, but we have to understand certain aspects of that in order to understand also why we're publishing it and why it's still important to look at this. I don't think that looking at this photo is a mundane endeavor by any means. So as far as the photo and how we came to learn of it, Tim McMillan, of course, had written an article which we featured right around the time of launch, which dealt with these so-called transmedium vehicles that are capable of traveling through the air and maybe into water and back out as easily as you or I could go for a swim. I mean, it's really hard to take an aircraft, a plane, and, send it down like a submarine, right? But these aircraft, or whatever they are, these objects, certainly seem to be able to do that. There's quite a bit in the literature about the so-called UFOs that are seen going into water and traveling through the ocean, remaining submerged, and they don't seem to be, encumbered by traveling through water any more than they are through traveling through air. So that was kind of the main thrust of Tim's primary piece. And within a couple of days, he had reached a point where he had been contacted by some folks who had brought a photograph to his attention, which he happened to already know existed. And through some of the sources cited in the first article, of course, he was able to confirm that this was indeed something that a intelligence report from around 2018 had actually looked at. This had been included in that. So at that point, we came to find out actually that this photograph apparently has been available online since around May, I believe, of this year at least. It was originally posted online by a guy named Blake S. Taylor on Twitter. He, however, doesn't seem to remember where he found it. He thinks it could have been on the NSA website. Again, he's not 100% clear on it. So the photo in itself is a bit mysterious. But that said, upon learning that it was so, in the wild, so to speak, Tim chose to go ahead and to write about it so as to try and present some context for it. But I want to be very clear. I mean, I remember when he said he was going to publish this, and the photograph in question is unclassified, as we understand it, unclassified for special use only, same as the photograph or the videos released by the Pentagon earlier this year, but which appeared online back in 2017. The famous gimbal go fast, right? These are unclassified, but they represent phenomena, okay, which are of interest. These videos to the Pentagon, to the Navy, which the DoD earlier this year classed as unidentified. They don't know what they are. We might say the same with this photograph, but again, looking at the photograph, I remember my first notion was that looks like a Mylar balloon to me. You
really went there. That's where your mind went first?
That's where my mind went first. I mean, the first thing, but again, you got to keep in mind how I tend to think about these sorts of things. You look at something that's potentially extraordinary, and the way I tend to operate is, okay, let's start ruling out what it might or might not be. What is the most likely explanation? And again, there are some who actually, Tim also among them, who have raised some fair criticisms of the idea that it's just a balloon. And so I want to get back around to that and really what it is most likely that this photograph represents. But some brief notes about this. There were a lot of early reports that suggested the image might have been taken sometime in 2018. Now, again, there is a version that is available online, and of course, which initially was accompanied this article, of course, but we ended up, this is funny, we scaled a bunch of the images on the website because there was so much traffic coming in, and we were having to try and reduce site load time, which resulted in the metadata being scrubbed. Now, John Greenwald has a version of it still available online. So there are versions out there. And of course, a lot of people on Twitter, if you follow UFO Twitter, are talking about the metadata. Now, I actually am looking at some of that data right now. And according to the data, the photo was taken on March 4th, 2019 at around 3:02 p.m., 3:02 and 30 seconds to be exact.
Right.
But the earlier reports about the image suggested that it had been taken in 2018. This was Tim McMillan's understanding that the photograph was from around 2018. It was subsequently reported at Mystery Wire that George Knapp also believed that they had been shown a similar photograph. Now there seems to be some dispute as to whether the photo that he saw showed the same object, which is kind of mysterious to me.
Right.
But again, he had said that they had initially been told it was taken in around 2018 as well. However, there are some problems with that, especially the fact that the metadata says March 4th, 2019. Now, again, Tim's understanding had been that it might be a photograph of a photograph. I know that some journalists have reached out to him also. I believe Keith Basterfield, the Australian UFO researcher, had asked about that. There have been people who have pointed out the fact, however, that, again, we've got a f-stop of about 1.8. This all available in the metadata, which is available online. The ISO for kids at home who have played with old analog cameras, you might get an old one that actually had ASA before it was ISO. Remember, the ISO was 20. The exposure was 1,656 second exposure, 1,656th, in other words. And based on those criteria, users online have suggested it's very likely that the photograph at the time it was taken, based on the ISO and the f-stop and all that, I mean, it would have been a bright daylight setting in terms of the response from the camera. So it seems suggestive of the fact that the photo was indeed taken and that the metadata supports not a photo of a photo taken on a screen, but of a photo taken in an actual bright, visible, sunlit environment, which is an interesting...
Yes. Now, and before we head to the break, the reports that came from the different agencies, of my understanding there are two, those were from 2018. with this image part of that report. Am I correct in understanding that? And how can you have both?
That's a good question. Again, yes, our understanding was that this photograph was reportedly associated with an intelligence report, which would have come prior to this summer. So again, I think that the suggestion, like you're pointing out, would be that this had been associated with an earlier report. Again, I remember Keith Masterfield talking about that too. Now, one thing that's a little strange about all that, of course, is that there's some are saying that it was an intel report that dated as far back as 2018 associated with the UAP task force, which was only formalized this year, right?
Right.
So again, but there has been continuous reporting. I think Tim and MJ had done an article for Vice previously, essentially saying that the existing Pentagon UFO studies, the UAP task force is sort of a continuation of a program which has continued. Previously, of course, iterations of it might be recognized as the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Now, Jimmy, for my own part, I'm not the expert on that, but I would say that it is a little confusing to me that there have been different iterations, different names, and if indeed ATIP, as was revealed in 2017, continues to this day, it's a little strange that it's gone through different names. And some sources would say that ATIP was never really the actual operative name of that, or, that group or that study, whatever you want to call it, in the first place. So there seems to be a good bit of confusion about the name, and I think there really has been since the whole story broke in 2017. So that part doesn't surprise me. But again, in any case, maybe that would at least rectify some of the confusion about how a report that might have included this photograph, because apparently they were interested in it, this unclassified photo of whatever that thing is, how that could date back to 2018 with the formation of a UAP task force only occurring in 2020. I mean, this isn't really time travel, apparently.
No, well, there is that. And then was the two reports that were circulated within these two agencies, is it possible that this picture was taken in 2019 and was merely inserted into an ongoing investigation, and it had nothing to do with 2018? Just the report and the was a continuing program?
Yeah, it could be a possibility. Again, that would be beyond my scope of knowledge, but anything's possible. What we do know as far as the provenance of the photograph, though, is that at least as early as May 2020 of this year, if not earlier, this photograph appeared online when it was posted on Twitter by Blake S. Taylor. But again, there is a mystery too, because Blake doesn't seem to remember where he came across it. He thought he found it at an NSA news, posting on the NSA.gov website. And he said it was with some of the other stuff that he thought was being, shared about UFOs through a site like that, but he wasn't sure if that was the site. Now, what's interesting to me is, again, if the NSA or any other agency which had this photograph had already shared this online, I mean, that's kind of interesting in itself. But wherever it comes from, no matter how you cut it, he had the photo and had posted it on Twitter, and there are screen grabs that show this all the way back in May of this year. So at least that early we know that it was on, online and had been in circulation, and hence partially how it came to Tim's attention that this photo was already out there.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Micah Hanks. We're talking about the image that was leaked, the F-18. F-18 pilot took it with his cell phone from the cockpit. More on everything when we come back, including what this may be. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black tonight. Micah Hanks. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I am a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to forbiddenknowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, forbiddenknowledge.tv. Again, visit forbiddenknowledge.tv today.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Micah Hanks. Tomorrow night, right here, John Burroughs and James Worrow are going to join us and announcing their new book. And then Wednesday night, Billy Carson is here talking about his new book. Crazy. I wrote the foreword in both of these books that are being published this week, Micah. Just a weird feeling to have that go down. And it's such an honor to write forewords to books, and then you do that at a certain point in time, and then all of a sudden, both books launch at the same time, and I've got it feels like it's almost ego self-serving, but it's the way the chips fell. Right? I just feel weird. Just feel weird about that. And also listening to your little drop for us right there. The Graylian Report is it was always the coolest name for any type of show. I just love it. I never even knew what it meant, right? It just, for me, it was just cool. The changing of the title of your show, does it change the content?
No, I don't. Well, I don't know. Actually, maybe it does a little, just because, I hadn't planned all that out. I had been feeling this need to kind of shift. And, when 2017 happened, prior to that, I had been really kind of getting more into archaeology, more into the sciences. A lot of people thought that with the name change, the idea was to go more in this sort of mainstream direction and away from the fringe sort of topics. Quite the opposite. Anyone who's kept up with my show, I've really become a lot more UFO-centric. And the real reason for the name change was I did not want to stigmatize the subject by having something that sounded like alien in there. And there's a long history, a long story, which I won't get into right now, about how the original name of the show was the Micah Hanks Program. And I had a blog at the time called The Graylian Report, and I went with that name for the podcast for various reasons at that time, certain contractual obligations and things like that. So it was really kind of coming back around to the original name, the name change, which many perceived as being this kind of about face. But if anything, I think I've gone deeper down the rabbit hole since the change occurred.
I want to ask you this, because we're talking about this photograph and the debrief and what it means for the community and its impact. But if we go back, you and I probably 6 years ago had a pretty deep conversation one night over dinner about UFOs, and I think at that time you weren't so sure. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you know the conversation that I'm talking about, where you and I were not butting heads, but no. It was more about, I was surprised to hear your take on what UFOs could be in pop culture and versus the reality of it. Has your view started to shift?
Well, I think I frustrate a few people out there in terms of not wanting to commit to thinking that UFOs are this or that. It's a difficult balance to try and find where we take a subject really seriously, but you don't step into any of those potential pitfalls by committing yourself to one idea. Whereas with this subject, a lot of people would say we're really going in the direction of extraterrestrial visitation. That has remained since the early days of ufology, if we call it that, even prior to Ruppelt actually introducing the term UFOs. That has been a potential, that has been what many see as a likely potential. But we haven't conclusively determined that that is what the origin of the phenomena is, or that is its ultimate nature. So again, when I am keeping it at arm's distance in terms of what I'm willing to say the UFO phenomena might represent, that may seem strange to a lot of other people out there. But really, there are many great UFO researchers over the years who have attempted to do the same thing. They say, look, we study the UFO. We have to leave those suppositions about what it might be at the door until we've got further evidence. That's the best way that we can actually frame the debate, which seems nebulous, but really it is in the effort to try and be scientifically responsible about having the conversation. Now, to your question, has my perspective changed any? You might say that, yeah, it has, and I'll tell you how. And maybe we can get into this a little later, because I know we've got some more to talk about with this photograph. But, when you look at the history of this phenomenon, and this is something, in fact, we should talk about, because it really frustrates me with the current dialogue. People who are fairly new to this topic, Jimmy, and they're looking at it and they're saying, okay, there's some stuff in this footage, that the Raytheon at FLIR was able to capture. Our Navy, they're observing these things. We've got some high-profile incidents like that Nimitz thing out there in 2004. And so it's probably Russia or China or that, or maybe we were testing some kind of new weapon, a new kind of aircraft, a new kind of drone. Maybe it was actually some sort of electronic countermeasure. Maybe it was a hologram. There was no actual craft at all. And I'm thinking, if indeed this all just came to pass within the last few years, it just erupted out of nowhere, maybe that argument would hold water. But a deeper look at the history takes us at least back to the end of the Second World War. And actually, my own show this week, actually airing just tonight, right? right before this, looked at the phenomenon going back to 1943 and some notable cases from that period. And over the weekend, actually, for the Anomaly Archive Streamathon event, I gave a lecture that went all the way back to antiquity and looked at similar instances of UFO-like experiences that have been recorded throughout history. Now, can we say that there is continuity between the modern UFO phenomenon and what people were seeing back, in 186 BC, or that people were seeing in the 1700s? I can't tell you. But what I do know is that there's a strong case that this phenomenon is not just new technology that has originated from somewhere here on Earth within the last few years. If it originates from here on Earth, it would had to have at least been here since the end of the Second World War. But really, how likely is it that we had something that sophisticated at that time that just sprung up out of nowhere, and yet we still haven't learned where that came from or who was developing it? I mean, that really, to me, almost strains credulity more than asking, could this be from elsewhere? Could this actually be an extraterrestrial presence? So, again, while I'm non-committal, one thing that I certainly will say is that looking at the history, to me, has deepened my own understanding of the phenomenon and also raises a whole lot of questions about the way people are framing the argument right now. And I think that if they knew the history, they wouldn't say it's Russia or China.
Well, I'm a walking paradox myself. And right now you're presenting yourself as a walking paradox too, as well, in that I am very quick to dismiss photographs and videos that get sent my way, and I'll look, oh, it's birds, it's balloons, it's this, it's that, it's headlights and trees, or whatever it is. But yet I have seen things that I can't explain. And when I see that, then I am expected to go all in on everything and every piece of footage and video, and I'm reticent to do that, and I can't have it both ways, but I'm asking everybody to do just that. I don't know what to make of those 3 videos that were put out, the FLIR, the Go Fast, and the Tic Tac. I look at those and I don't see ET in that. But when I look at this new photograph that was, sent out last week, 2 weeks ago, I look at that and I'm a walking paradox. I look at that and I'm thinking that is not of this earth. I don't see what's really strange. And I know people were expecting me to go, it's just a Mylar balloon church, and that I'm going to jump on that. I'm thinking about the altitude, and I'm looking at the circumference of the Earth in the background, and how could it be that a Mylar party balloon could get up to 40,000 feet or whatever the altitude is without exploding? It just doesn't have the lift to get up that high. So let's actually start right there when we're talking about what may be in this image. How could a Mylar balloon get up to that altitude? What do you think the altitude may be?
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. Don't let me forget. I want to actually let me back up just so that I don't forget. I'm going to go down my notes here. As far as the origins of the photo, again, we in the last segment touched on how recently it has been reported, but the fact that, of course, it's been online for months already at least, and maybe I suspect longer than that. Now, it was suggested the other day, I believe by Roger Glassell, that the fighter pilot in the aircraft, you can actually see in the reflection off of the cockpit glass what appears to be the helmet associated with Squadron 32 VFA 32. And it's strongly implied, and in fact, again, Keith Basterfield, who I mentioned earlier, he says he thinks that we could probably narrow this down to being the VFA 32 based out of Naval Air Station Oceana at Virginia Beach. Now, I will note, though, in the metadata, though, that it actually states that that the phone at the time, the iPhone 8 that took the photograph, was on Pacific time. So there may be a contradiction there. Who knows? But it seems like there might be. But if we talk about the altitude and the question about that, and actually to that point, though, I should note that if the region where the photograph was taken was Pacific, some have suggested that the pilot might instead have been with VFA-2, the bounty hunters, the USS Carl Vinson. So that's another suggestion, again, that might account for the time zone difference. But anyway, coming back to the whole thing about the curvature of the Earth, like you mentioned, for the curvature of the Earth to be visible, we would have to have been at around 35,000 feet. Okay, now the minimum altitude where the curvature of the horizon becomes visible is about that point. And based on that, the photo seems to suggest that, again, if you look from the position in the cockpit, you can see that curvature. It would appear that the jet was higher than that 35,000 foot altitude at that time. Some have speculated, Tim McMillan included. We've talked a lot about this, of course, in the back channel chat for the debrief. But he has speculated that it might have been as high as 40,000 or 45,000 feet. But you got to keep in mind that the ceiling for one of these aircraft, again, a Boeing F-18 Super Hornet, can only go to about 50,000 feet. So it's got to be somewhere between that and that 35,000 feet for the curvature of the Earth to be visible.
Right.
So is it a balloon? Okay, how high can a balloon get? Physics, of course, tells us a balloon will stop rising once its density begins to match the surrounding air. And weather balloons, of course, use this kind of, the physics behind balloons and lift to their advantage and are able to go to higher altitudes. Scientific balloons can go to incredibely high altitudes.
100,000 feet. 100,000 feet.
Way up there.
Yes.
But
yes.
a conventional balloon or a Mylar balloon, not so much. A helium balloon generally isn't going to go much higher than about, and again, this according to weather data I found online, 29,537 feet. So that's a little shy of the 35,000 feet we would need to be at to be able to see the curvature of the Earth.
But also, isn't that, to be clear, that's a big-ass balloon. That's not a small Mylar party balloon with a limited amount of gas inside of it. To get to 30, we're talking about something that's got a huge amount of helium inside of it and would look like that type of balloon. This does not.
Yeah, there was an estimate that a researcher did that guessed that at the rough approximate distance the object appears to be in relation to the jet, that this thing would have been 7 feet wide instead of like a 12-inch party balloon. Now, again, I don't know with the very limited frame of reference in terms of, again, only the sky behind the thing, how accurate those kinds of estimates would be. What I do know, however, is that a Mylar balloon, generally speaking, isn't even going to be able to get up to the altitude that a standard helium balloon can get, I think, according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service data I found, because they worry about the Mylar balloons, getting out there and everything and causing problems in national parks and what have you. They say that these things, generally, they have encountered them in aircraft at 26,000 feet, but that is still, of course, we have to keep in mind, 3,000 or so feet less than a helium balloon. The only kind of balloon I could imagine that would really be able to get up to that altitude and could go higher would be some kind of scientific balloon. Now, in the original article, and Jimmy, this is something that kind of frustrated me. I didn't write it. It was Tim's article, but for our publication, again, it was evident a lot of people who were commenting on it online had not actually read the article, because in the article, we actually quote an atmospheric scientist, Terry Hawk. He's the in situ sensing facility manager at the National Center for Atmospheric Research's Earth Observing Laboratory. Not only did he say he thought it looked like a Mylar weather balloon, but he said it didn't appear to be a dropscond associated with an atmospheric experimental balloon, which was interesting to us. Now, again, to me, I wouldn't say we should necessarily rule out the Mylar balloon. And I also have to point out the fact that, again, several people online have pointed this out. Chris Griesel had been one of them who has been on Twitter and talked about this and also communicated with us. But a lot of people have pointed out this particular party balloon that features the DC Comics character Batman.
Mm-hmm.
It strongly resembles what's in the photograph. And again, if I had to guess, Jimmy, if I look at the photograph and say, what does it most closely resemble? I mean, that's clearly what it most closely resembles to my eye. In fact, it's almost a dead ringer. You can just about see the shapes of Batman's fists, his face, and everything in the actual photograph. But the problem, of course, there is accounting for the altitude. If the estimates based on the curvature of the Earth as represented in the photograph are accurate, it's maybe not impossible, but it certainly makes it more difficult to account for the Mylar balloon being at that altitude, because it's about maybe as much as 10,000 feet higher than it should be. So that's a question people have raised.
Yes, and I saw all of those comparisons, and sure, if you're going to look at it, anything can resemble anything. It does resemble that. What it doesn't look like is a 43 centimeter Batman Mylar balloon. 43 centimeters. That's this big, right? 43 centimeters. That would be that would not even be visible by an F18. It would just be a dot off in the distance. We don't know. We don't know. We can't triangulate anything here. The key. So we don't know the actual distance. We don't know the actual size. That we don't know. The key to all of this is the pilot. Is there any chance of this pilot coming forward? He could answer all of the questions for us. Distance, size, was it moving? Was it stationary? The pilot's testimony is probably the most important key.
Certainly, and unfortunately, that information is not currently publicly available. I would guess that some of Tim McMillan's sources have presumably spoken with that pilot, because they were under the impression, based on additional information about the photograph, that the object had been hovering in midair. And this is, again, in the article, in the main article that was published at the time that the photograph was released. They had said that it seemed to be suspended and it didn't seem to be affected by air currents. So as they were moving around it, they said that the air didn't seem to be carrying this thing along and it drifting like a balloon would be expected to do. This thing was just kind of hovering, and that this thing was visible for several minutes. But again, like you say, we need additional information. And this really raises a point that people treat this as though it's a new issue in UFO research, that we can't get some key witnesses that otherwise might provide data that would easily explain this, or at very least make it more interesting depending on what they tell us. We can't get them to come on the record. I remember talking to Robert Hastings, the author of UFOs and Nukes, years ago. At the time, he had interviewed, I think, more than 100 different individuals about these UFO incidents that occur in relation to nuclear weapons facilities. And yet he had said that right around the time that his book came out, and he had held an event at the National Press Club in Washington, back when you could hold events at the National Press Club in Washington. Right now, that would seem like such an alien idea in the era of COVID. But he said again that there was a high-profile incident that occurred at F.E. Warren Base, I believe, out there in Montana, I believe.
Yes,
and, yes. This is a famous incident. Initially, it hadn't been, connected with UFOs in any way. It was reported in the Atlantic. But what Hastings came to find was he spoke with people who, because they were employed there at the facility and they wanted to be able to keep their jobs, they said, we can't go on the record and use our names. We have to speak on background. But yeah, there was an object in the sky, and, our superior officers told us, don't talk about this. I remember him telling me that, Jimmy, in like 2011 or 2012, maybe. And so, again, it's very similar. There seems to be this aspect, especially when government is involved in these incidents, where, military service men and women sometimes do not feel comfortable going on record and talking, or they can't for reasons of national security. Even if they can talk about, what they were involved with, they don't want their name associated with it for various reasons. So, I get it. That is a problem. As journalists, you always want to be able to quote your sources. But, sometimes sources will only speak on background like that. But again, based on Tim's sources, they seem to indicate that they thought that the circumstances under which the photograph had been taken were much more interesting than what would be perceived as just being a balloon. But now let's come over to the idea that it is a balloon for a minute, because this is something I think a lot of people have missed. One person who didn't miss it was Alejandro Rojas, my brother over there at Open Minds. Alejandro had been saying, and he laid it out there, and this is precisely what I was thinking at the time of publication too. If it is just a balloon, let's say it is, that raises some really important questions about what the UAP task force is looking at, whether there is enough in terms of the resources at their disposal to really carry out and again, this with full respect for them, I hope, again, that the National Defense Authorization Act goes through and that they aren't encumbered that there isn't anything that prevents the UAP task force from continuing and producing this report that the Senate Intelligence Committee has requested. I want to see all that come to fruition, and I support, government efforts to try and understand what this phenomenon may entail. What worries me is that there may not be enough resources on hand to be able to do that. And so if they were looking at a photograph of something that does just turn out to be a balloon, in my opinion, it could be helpful in terms of illustrating a problem that government faces in trying to look at this. And again, if that weren't the case, let me give you a couple more examples. Why would Lou Elizondo have resigned, from his position at the DOD in protest, saying that the government isn't putting enough of its resources toward this issue, despite the threat potential? Look at on the Joe Rogan podcast the other day when Jacques Vallée and James Fox are on there, and James Fox is reading the letter from Chris Mellon saying we need more than 2 guys up there at the Pentagon looking at this issue. Guys, this may be the most significant issue that humankind faces today. We really need to put our best efforts and all the resources we have behind it. So in terms of looking at it and it possibly being a balloon photograph, really that's in the furtherance of asking those questions. What does the government know? What are they looking at? Why are they looking at it? And are they as equipped as they need to be in order to really discern what this problem may entail? Those are all very relevant questions that I think must be asked.
Yes, and I'll take it a step further then, if we go into that zone, which is, don't we have the brain power inside of the Pentagon and the military-industrial complex to have the discernment between what is a balloon and what is something else?
I don't know.
I don't. It was Chris Mellon, as we know, that went live with TTSA and showed a Mylar balloon and literally said, "What is this technology? It's certainly not ours." Right? Yeah. And I looked at this report. I read the two. I read the 2 reports, and I believe, unless I read it wrong, they definitely moved away from the balloon theory in those reports, right? They actually considered that, didn't they?
They did not seem to think that the balloon explanation was the best and most likely, given the circumstances, at least what I understand. But again,
right.
I've read the same article you have. So...
Yeah, that raises so many questions. I would have thought that if they got the pilot's report about this photograph and what's behind it, that the pilot should certainly know if it's a balloon or not.
Well, maybe the pilot will come forward again. We have yet again a similar instance with Chad Underwood coming forward only after several years, again, like Dave Fravor and many others who didn't come out immediately and talk about what they observed back during the 2004 Nimitz incident. But I mean, even after Fravor had appeared in the New York Times and gone on some programs and things and had really risen to prominence as one of the key witnesses in that entire affair, I mean, it was some time before Chad Underwood finally goes and does the interview with the Intelligencer at the New York Daily News, right? New York Magazine, I guess. And then, of course, he speaks with Jeremy Corbell on record, actually, and that lengthy interview, a little more than 20 minutes, was fantastic. The big takeaway, too, and not to get away from the discussion of the photograph, but again, to illustrate the fact that this is similar in the sense that eventually the pilot did come forward and look at what he said when he did provide further details. Whatever that thing was operating out there in our controlled airspace in the middle of a military exercise, if it's not ours, that was an act of war. What about that is not a national security concern? So maybe a pilot will come forward at some point and say, look, guys, everybody's been saying it's a Mylar balloon. Let me tell you what else we saw.
Right.
And maybe additional information forthcoming will help reframe the debate, so to speak. But we aren't to that point yet. I hope, however, that we will. And of course, there is this discussion about another photograph. It hasn't been released, but at very least based on the descriptions from those who claim to have seen this.
Well, let me jump in. We got to take a break right here, but we will discuss that second photograph when we come back. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Micah Hanks. That's right. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Old New England Soap is committed to producing the highest quality organic and goat milk soaps available anywhere. We take pride in using the purest ingredients and avoiding the typical shortcuts used by other soap makers. Because goat milk is what feeds your skin, we have formulated our soap to use the maximum amount of goat milk possible, 38%, more than double any other brand. Not because it's easy, but because our soap is always better. We are proud to offer you what we consider to be truly premium quality handmade soaps. What's more, our soap does not contain GMO ingredients, pesticides, sulfates, dyes, artificial colors, alcohol, or petroleum products. Try our new shampoo bar and pooch soap, and be sure to see all of the great scented Woodwick soy candles that burn soot-free for up to 100 hours. Right now, save 15% on your order and get free shipping on orders over $45. Buy now at oldnesoap.com. That's oldnesoap.com. Not available in stores. oldnesoap.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter filled with the latest paranormal news, trending topics, and fresh articles from some of the most popular critical thinkers in the community today. Stay informed on your favorite paranormal podcasts and live streaming talk shows. Interact with the Telepath and upload your paranormal story or pics. It could be featured in an upcoming edition. Sign up right now for the free Telepath newsletter at paranormal.radio. That's paranormal.radio.
Including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church, talking about, leaking UFO photographs online. If you want to do anything like that, what you need to do is you need to do what I do. Get Virtual Shield VPN. You want your own VPN network. That's the only way to make sure that you're not being spied on by anybody, by advertisers, nothing. You need to get Virtual Shield VPN. If you want to browse the internet anonymously and securely like I do, please visit virtualshield.com/fade to black. And you can go over to jimmychurchradio.com. We've got banners right there. You can click, or you can click on the link in the description box below this video that you are watching me on right now. Do that, and you will get Virtual Shield VPN today for free. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Micah Hanks. And we were discussing this leaked photograph, this F18 pilot. Photographed something with his cell phone. The metadata is out there. The image is real. That is definitely what we can conclude. What is in the image, I don't know. But in the chatter that has been going around on the internet, Micah, has been the discussion of a second image, an image that purportedly shows a triangular craft with lights, 3 lights on the 4 corners coming out of an ocean at a 90-degree angle.
That's correct. That's my understanding as well. And again, just to be clear, there has been a lot of confusion. I remember reading a study a few years ago. Jimmy, maybe you can recall this as well. This study talked about the way that people often will share a story on social media, having only read the headline. They don't actually read the article. And again, not to pick on anybody, but I strongly suggest that people may not have read the article, because one of the prevailing questions, Tim McMillan was on a radio show last night too, and he had said that people kept asking, is this the triangle? We've laughed about that because he states in the reporting that he has done there at the debrief, our site, that no, there was apparently, a lot of people have actually over the last several months been talking about a photograph that reportedly shows a triangle-shaped object, coming up out of what presumably is the ocean. This also photographed by a jet pilot. That photograph, people have heard about it. I've spoken with everyone from podcasters to independent researchers who say that they have sources who said that they have seen this because this was in a widely circulated intelligence report back in the summer. And so, again, with his sources, like many others I have spoken to who have talked about seeing this, Tim McMillan also heard about that photograph. There was a recreation based on the sort of description in circulation, which Dave Beatty, the fantastic visual artist and also the director of the film The Nimitz Encounters, he actually produced this sort of mock-up, a digital rendering of what it might look like. It was featured in Tim's article. But again, when the new photo that we're talking about tonight came out, people say, is this the triangle? I mean, I'm seeing everybody online. I mean, some big name people too. I won't name those big names, but I mean, some big names were saying this could be the triangle. And I'm thinking, guys, just read the article, right? So no, there is discussion of, and there has been for quite a while, some other kind of a photograph that, I don't know what the classification status of that photograph might be, but again,
have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Because
has Tim McMillan seen it?
I don't think he has. I mean, again, I don't have any indication that, in fact, I'm trying to think if there's anybody I know who has. I don't know anyone who has seen it. I only know people who have spoken with individuals who had access to the report who say that they saw it.
Now, what kind of danger zone are we getting into here? Right? He said, I have a friend, that works at a gas station that saw, right? And the next thing you know, his cousin, are we getting into that kind of area?
I really worry that we are. And in truth, again, let me be clear. I'm not in love with the whole discussion of quote unquote leaked photographs. Again, the photo that our publication reported on had been online for months. My suspicion is actually that it had been in the public sphere beforehand, and that it came to the attention probably of the UAP task force, as is termed today. That's the operative term for the official organization that Norquist, of course, is heading up as of this summer. But and that wouldn't seem unusual to me. I mean, let's say that Jimmy is walking down the street and he sees a UFO. It's like, wow, what is that? And you film it. If the government's going to try and produce a report on what these things might be, and they're compelled enough to, examine a piece of footage or a photograph you've obtained, I could see them doing that. So, again, that's why I keep saying this photo might have been around much longer, but we know it's at least been around since May. Now, that said, again, others say that they have seen something else. I do know that there was an interview. I haven't listened to it. I don't know if you have, but apparently it occurred on Grant Cameron's podcast, where there was some discussion about this. And what was trending on Twitter thereafter was what people were calling Triangle Gate, this purported photograph. So again, let me just be clear. The photo we're talking about right now, you and I, which we've been breaking down and analyzing, that has nothing to do with this alleged photo said to exist. And as far as that kind of scary territory, how much do we know? Is this photo ever going to see the light of day? Does it really exist? Those questions remain, in my opinion, based on the current evidence that are, at disposal. But again, what we know is that there are people, and this maybe is the one redeeming aspect of this. Several people say that this widely distributed, again, this reported in Tim's initial article dealing with the transmedium vehicles and reporting on that, several people, who were familiar with this intelligence report said that they had observed this photograph. And there are some pretty high profile names as far as those who are aware of its existence and who say that they have seen it. So, again, if it were just one person, I think it would be more concerning. In my personal opinion, based on the number of people who have said that they are aware of its existence and who had actually been aware of the existence of the report that it was actually contained within, I would strongly suggest that it seems likely to me that the photo does exist, and no, it's not the same thing we're talking about here.
Now, how do we let's be very basic here.
Sure.
If I get that photograph in an email and I see it, I don't comment and say that I've seen the photograph. I publish it. Right? Right? I publish it. And I have the same issue, Micah, with any other UFO researcher that claims that they have seen the image without producing the image. I don't get that. I almost go the opposite direction where I dismiss it because anybody would publish this photograph if they had it.
Yeah, I would think that, if they had it, I think that's a good point. And it reminds me a bit of something that we see throughout history with UFO reports, where there are sometimes even military encounters where we can go back and we can look in the Blue Book files. I was at the Project 1947 website last night that Jan Aldrich has run for years. Talk about just a trailblazer. And I'm going back through some of the cases from the 60s and 70s where they're saying this UFO showed up, it hovered near the aircraft, or rather the sailing vessel. It had what appeared to be portholes around the edges. Several photographs were taken. And I'm like, where did those photos go? I mean, these photos don't just disappear into the ether unless, as people have alleged for years, somebody is actually collecting these. Some agency actually has some repository of UFO photographs, the best stuff you could ever imagine. I think about Gordon Cooper claiming that the guys out there at White Sands filmed a little saucer touchdown and then take off. Whatever happened to that? They said that they had the footage. It was confiscated. Is there really a bunch of footage of this stuff somewhere that we'll never see, the light of day? I mean, I couldn't tell you. But again, that's the problem inherent to UFO research and these stories that over time, I think they almost do become sort of mythologized, Jimmy, and we'll never know, was there really a photograph taken, or is that just some sort of an embellishment that was added after the fact? Now, I would like to think that based on the number of people who have talked about these intelligence reports, I mean, who knows, maybe when this report's filed, if, again, the UAP is able to complete its report, because you got to keep in mind, again, referring to the notes right here, we have the fact that the Senate passed the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, which included an Intelligence Authorization Act. That's the portion that contained the language about the UAP task force. But there's also been some talk right now, despite the fact that that was passed right through the House back in July. There's some discussion about whether the NDAA might end up being vetoed. And I mean, if that happens, it could be a while before the UAP task force is able to complete a report. So would this photo be included in that? I don't know. I hope, though, that they are able to continue toward the production of this report unencumbered. It would really be tragic if we were to suppose that they were going to, actually publish something, and because of politics up there in Washington and partisanship, they weren't actually able to do. And again, what I'm talking about right there, Popular Mechanics has reported on, and other outlets which have nothing to do with UFOs, they're all talking about how politics could get in the way of this NDAA being passed. So there are a lot of factors complicating this situation. But I mean, best case scenario, I think the UAP task force publishes its report. Maybe we see that photograph. I mean, would that be a crazy proposition?
Well, how does a UFO researcher of note say that they have seen this image? How do you see it? Is somebody flashing you a photograph of it in person, right? Here it is, and you see it, and then it's taken away. Or is somebody coming up to you with the image on a cell phone? Look, check this out, right? Or are they seeing it electronically via email? And if that's the case, and it's via email, which I don't think that somebody's walking around showing, triangle UFOs on a cell phone. Oh, but I can't send it to you, but here it is.
Look at this.
Right. If it's coming via email, then that would have made its way onto the internet. And that's my point.
Well, sure. But now let me try and clarify something. As you said, if any significant UFO researcher of note claims they've seen it. Now, I don't know of any who claim that they've seen it. UFO researchers. That's the issue right there. Again, my understanding is that only the people who claim that they are involved, who have seen this, aren't people in the UFO community. These are people who are more involved on that government side of things and who are aware of an intelligence report that contained the photo, which, as Tim McMillan reported, has been widely circulated. But again, to my knowledge, I know of no UFO researchers who claim to have seen this thing, only those who have spoken to people who say that they saw it. Those individuals all would be in government.
If you have the image, right, does the debrief publish it?
If I had it, that's a good question. I mean, here's my issue. I respect national security, and let me just be clear: we don't have it, by the way.
Yeah, I don't respect it. Not when it comes to black triangles. Well, okay. Let's stay on this. TTSA had no issues with claiming the responsibility of distributing those 3 videos, whether they were out on the net before or what have you.
And one of them was, as we know, yeah.
Yes, for more than a decade, actually. So if that's the case, then would we be in a position to expect this to get leaked, maybe this time around with the debrief and not necessarily through TTSA or another medium?
I mean, I wouldn't expect it to be leaked through us because, again, we don't have any kind of contact or access. I mean, Tim McMillan has people he has spoken with who he has interviewed for his articles. But again, when we look at TTSA, slightly different dynamic there. Again, you've got some former government insiders who were, they actually were employed within the government and thereby would have had knowledge of the existence of the videos. And again, whatever process was enacted in order to facilitate their release. Again, there's a bunch of there are different kind of takes on how that happened. Again, Elizondo had said that he had at one point acquired them and that it maybe had been stated that was for instructional purposes, but that he had officially requested their release for whatever purpose. Then, of course, when the DOD released them in April, they had continued to say, as they have said all along, that these were unauthorized releases. But again, those videos were unclassified for special use only. So, when they were released into the public, and one of them, as we just mentioned, already had been for years, it had appeared on a German, like filmmaking website server or something like that, as reported by Open Minds and others. Again, when these things appeared online, it's kind of like, okay, well, they're out, but they don't seem to show anything classified. Now, one interesting point about that, and you and I talked about this on late night radio some time back, but there had also been the fact that the Pentagon at the time of the release in April had noted, hey, look, after a thorough investigation, we have concluded that there's no evidence of any kind of classified technology displayed in these videos, and thereby we have authorized these now for release. We class the phenomenon that appears in those videos unidentified. What they were saying is that they went back and they re-reviewed those videos. At least that was my take on what they were saying. We reviewed these videos to determine whether there was any classified information. Is that technology our own stuff? Is that something that, like Bill Nye the Science Guy says, we cooked up out there at Area 51? Well, the DOD said no. Now,
well, wouldn't alien technology be classified?
Maybe not. That's the interesting thing. You would think this would be the most highly classified secret. Think about the Wilbert B. Smith memorandum, back from what was it, 1952, I believe. Again, Canadian engineer, comes down, spends some time in Washington, goes to the Canadian embassy there in Washington. He's trying to get to the bottom of the UFO thing. He's read Frank Scully's book, Behind the Flying Saucers. And he goes to the embassy, and a fella at the embassy makes some queries there in Washington with his contacts and tells Mr. Smith, yeah, there is a government scientific group led by Vannevar Bush. Oh, yeah, I've got that same copy. Jimmy, ladies and gentlemen at home, is showing me his copy of Frank Scully's Behind the Flying Saucers. I've got the same one in there in my other room. Yeah, classic UFO literature. But yeah, he'd read that book, and his contacts there at the embassy said, the Americans are taking this seriously. It is the most significant thing. I mean, this is a higher priority than the H-bomb. Again, to your point, it would seem based on what Wilbert Smith was told that, yeah, the Americans did treat the UFO issue as a highly classified subject. But by today's standards, the DoD releases videos of things they can't identify. They said, this doesn't seem to be anything of ours. It doesn't seem to be an enemy technology. Nothing we could see in this footage, if released to the public, details anything that the public shouldn't know about it. Therefore, we class it as unidentified, but it's unclassified. Here you go. So I don't know what's in those videos, but if that's alien, it's unclassified.
Well, exactly. And well, those 3 videos could be anything. If nobody mentioned the word UFO and you saw the videos, would you jump to UFO first? Probably not. The power of suggestion allows you to view it as possibly alien. I'm talking about the FLIR, Tic Tac, and Go Fast.
Yeah.
But this image showing a triangle UFO coming out of the ocean at 90 degrees, that's if it is what it's supposed to be, that is not these 3 videos. Now we are clearly looking at something that is unexplainable. That's a big jump coming from the Pentagon. That type of leak and that type of exposure out into the public, is that something that we could ever expect?
I don't know. And again, the more skeptical side of me has to say, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean,
right.
I'm trying to discuss this and frame this in terms of the narrative as people I've spoken with have discussed, Tim McMillan being one of them, but I mean, a lot of people apparently have heard about this. I believe George Knapp has talked about it. Now, I will say this, and again, I don't want to completely suppose anything, but as Keith Basterfield over on his blog noted, there was an update at Mystery Wire from George Knapp saying that the photograph that they had in their possession did not appear to be the same one that was leaked online earlier this year, and which the debrief reported on in recent days. So I'm interested in knowing what exactly, if there is some sort of difference or discrepancy between them, what that would be, or if indeed we're talking about the same photograph, because one interpretation, and I haven't talked to George about this, but I respect George very highly. I think, very highly of him, but, and he and I have not corresponded recently either. It's been since maybe in the spring since we last had an email exchange. So I'd be interested in knowing what's the difference between those. Does he have a different photograph? I don't know. But again, the skeptic in me, Jimmy, would have to say, I'll believe it when I see it. Hence why I am not enamored particularly with a bunch of discussion about photographs that really, again, A, one, nobody's actually seen, but people have only heard about, and B, one that, and maybe, I'm wrong, but I still think, I maintain it looks a lot like a balloon of some kind to me. Maybe further information forthcoming will cause me to change my opinion about that. But I mean, if I had to say what I really thought it's most likely to be, I have to say balloon. So again, I would really like to see the conversation come back over to, hey, while all this talk about China and Russia and Area 51 and all this stuff is so popular right now, did we have that in 1947? Did we have that in 1943? Did we have some sort of nascent technology that was trailing our allied pilots, over Europe and, in fact, over the Pacific theater during the Second World War? What was Charles Fort talking about back in the 10s and the 20s and the 30s and the 14 Society after him? What were these so-called airships that were seen over the Americas in the 1890s? Maybe this is all just mythology. But again, if it's all just mythology, humans have an incredible incredible imaginary capability of imagining strange things that we see in the skies. And in recent years, we have seemingly filmed things that seem to corroborate those sightings from, the past. So again, it's not to say necessarily that there is distinctive continuity, but if we look, at very least, if we go back to the end of the Second World War and we look at the descriptions of the objects, if we look at the fact that in addition to anecdotal reports and sightings and even photographs, we also have radar data that sometimes corroborates them, there strongly suggests to me the idea that there's a technological component in something that's been around for many years that we can't put a finger on. It's not something that has only come to light in recent years, as much of the mainstream media seems to maintain.
Why do you think this conversation is happening now?
Because we've got footage. Because we've got footage, and people put their eyes on that, and they go, "Oh, look! Wow! Now there's something to talk about." They haven't read the history, And again, it's not to say that these things are all alien. I don't know. Maybe they are, but if people read the history, they will learn this is not something that just popped up in 2004 with Carrier Strike Group 11 out there off the Pacific coast.
Well, it seems that Susan Gao over at the Pentagon is constantly now having to address aliens, ET, UFOs, flying saucers, and UAPs, and having this conversation constantly now. And it's never been like this in the past. Not since like Ruppelt, and we go back to the early 50s, where the Pentagon is forced into a conversation about aliens and ETs.
Yeah, I have to sympathize with Susan Goff because, she is an individual who, like you say, is being bombarded constantly. She, as a matter of being a spokesperson for the Department of Defense and being someone who is very trained in, let us call it controlled use of language, but also understands that she has to maintain operational security by what she does and does not say. I sympathize with her having to constantly field questions from Tim McMillan. Mm-hmm. I told Tim McMillan first time he came on my show, and I maintain this because I work close with him and I love him to death. I told him, I said, I can tell right now you're the kind of guy who will never stay out of trouble. And if I were Susan Goff and I was getting emails from Tim McMillan asking about UFOs all the time, I think my job was pretty interesting too. But I know that he's not the only guy who's hitting her with emails. And I'm sure her existence right now is as interesting as yours or mine, but it's an interesting time to be alive and be asking these questions, is it not?
Do you think that we've got a minute left before the break, and we've got more to discuss when we come back, but do you think that in the Pentagon right now there are actual discussions about UFOs? Not UAPs, not things that maybe, not unidentified. No, I'm talking about conversations of the alien kind. Does this actually happen inside of the Pentagon?
Of course. I mean, I'm sure it does. It has since the early days. I mean, think about that famous, back in the Sign era, which predated Project Blue Book, when the U.S. Air Force had Project Sign underway, and they produced that famous estimate of the situation. I mean, this was based largely on a 1948, I know we're short on time, but 1948, pilots Charles and Whitted said this great big kind of rocket ship looking like thing with portholes down the side shooting flame out the back almost collided with them. And they had to look at that and go, what in the world are we dealing with? And of course, top brass didn't like the conclusion. But again, 1948, they said it's possible these things are from someplace else. That possibility remains today because we don't know what the phenomenon is or where it comes from. Until we establish its provenance, that discussion will remain.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Micah Hanks. We've got lots more to talk about. We will continue the discussion when we come back after this short break. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to getthetea.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's getthetea.com.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRAradio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend. Let's face it, you've always wanted to do a sky watch and see your first UFO. Today, it's easy. Just get your own HP7 3B Cobalt Jimmy Church Edition night vision goggles from Hoffman's Optics. This is the same U.S. military system that I use, featuring a Generation 3 blue phosphor image tube. That's right, it's blue, not black and green. This is the only blue system in the world, and it's waterproof, lightweight, combat-proven, simple to use, and ready to go. Hoffman's Optics helped create night vision sky watches, and now you can see what everyone has been talking about each night from your own backyard. Just call 760-231-9929. That's 760-231-9929. You can click on the banners on our site or visit UFOnightvisiongoggles.com. That's UFOnightvisiongoggles.com. Go back, Lee Tepe.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRAradio.com.
When you're in the house for longer periods of time, you can see them flying or running across the floor. Ooh, yuck. They're unhealthy, gross, and disgusting. Bugs. I loathe bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. On contact, it kills hidden bugs, including ants, roaches, and fleas. Plus, Orange Guard is a residual repellent. All of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally recognized as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard. Available at orangeguard.com, Whole Foods, and Ace Hardware.
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter filled with the latest paranormal news, trending topics, and fresh articles from some of the most popular critical thinkers in the community today. Stay informed on your favorite paranormal podcasts and live streaming talk shows. Interact with the Telepath and upload your paranormal story or pics. It could be featured in an upcoming edition. Sign up right now for the free Telepath newsletter at paranormal.radio. That's paranormal.radio.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Micah Hanks. I want to remind everybody this week, tomorrow night, John Burroughs and James Worrow join us. The release of their new book that is coming out on the 16th on Wednesday. And then Wednesday night, Billy Carson is here to discuss his new book, Woke Doesn't Mean Broke. And Thursday night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. Our guest tonight, Micah Hanks. And Micah, jumping around the headlines that went down, certainly last week was a pretty crazy one in the world of ufology. And this article broke, went completely viral, picked up on all of the news sites around the world about this Israeli space security chief, Haim, I hope I'm saying that right, Haim Eshed, came out in the open and disclosed a bunch of pretty crazy statements. Now, when you first started to see this break, what went through your mind?
Well, not a whole lot, because initially I didn't pay much attention to it. And in fact, my buddy Brett Tingley, who is a writer for the War Zone, had messaged me, and he says, what do you think about this? He says, you guys covered this, didn't you? And I said, no. I said, why would we have covered that? Lo and behold, the next morning, one of our freelancers dropped an article about this. But again, he was kind of looking at this in a more hypothetical way. He took a very interesting angle on it. Colin did, our author. So again, that was kind of interesting. But as far as the way it was initially reported by NBC News and other outlets, Haim Eshed, the former head of Israel's Defense Ministry's Space Directorate, had originally said in a Hebrew language interview a number of things, ranging from the idea that there's a galactic federation to the notion that Donald Trump had knowledge of an extraterrestrial reality and was on the verge of disclosing it, but hadn't done that for fear of causing mass hysteria. All claims that sound remarkably similar and very familiar, of course, in the annals of literature, related to UFOs. So, again, to me, I was kind of like, okay, here's the latest Paul Hellyer, right? Paul Hellyer, the former Canadian, defense minister, who had come out and said very interesting things about his perspectives on UFOs. But when you go back and, in my opinion, you listen to the actual interviews with him, I don't see so much of Paul's worldview being shaped by, secret documents and things that he is able to use to support maybe his argument. It seems to be more kind of akin to things that, to me, he seems to have, picked up from reading UFO literature, maybe reading online, things like that. Now, I couldn't tell you if that's what Haim Eshed is doing and where he got his information. Again, apparently there's this, I believe it's a book, The Universe, or maybe that's the interview, The Universe Beyond the Horizon, Conversations with Professor Haim Eshed by Hagar Yanai, which was published in November. I would like to read that. That may also just be the Hebrew language interview with the professor. But again, by all accounts, he seems to be a very well-respected professor. Why he would come out and say all of these things that sound much more to me like Star Trek than current ufology and what, again, the United States government seems to be looking at with regard to UAP, that's anybody's guess.
Well, we have a couple of pretty bold statements by Haim. One of them, that there is an existing underground base on Mars, right? Yeah. With both Earthlings and extraterrestrials coexisting in this underground base on Mars. Now, where do we go? And there's one other statement. Well, there's two or three here that I pointed out last week. But one of them, one of the statements that he made, and coming from somebody with awards and diplomas and respect and recognition with not only his government but universities around the world, to say that the unidentified flying objects, that's how he calls the aliens, right? The unidentified flying objects don't want this disclosed just yet. It's kind of a weird statement to come from somebody educated.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where that comes from, or at very least where I saw something similar. It's not related to what Professor Eshed is saying, but I had read about, maybe it was just speculation on part of a scientist. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it'll come to me here in a moment. But I do remember what he said, and the main thrust of the argument had been, what if the UFO nauts, if the operators behind the phenomenon, they do want to interact with us, but they want to do so gradually so as to go through this sort of process of, normalizing their presence so that humans do not react violently, do not react with fear, because that could be problematic for the occupants. Now, again, it could be, if we want to go, full-blown conspiracy here, and I'm not saying this is what I think is going on, but lately, admittedly, Jimmy, I got to say, and I think you're just the kind of guy with your opening monologue tonight talking about conspiracies, you're just the guy to share this idea with. At some point, and this keeps going through my head, we have to get back around to saying we can look at UFOs all night and say, what are UFOs? What might they represent? What could UFOs be? Well, at some point, if we recognize UFOs as being an intelligence or a intelligently controlled technology, again, who are the operators, right? Even if that dogfight, up there over Michigan, involved something more akin to a drone, something the size of a Tic Tac, right? That's big enough to have occupants. Something like these big triangles that are described, certainly large enough to potentially carry, maybe an entire crew. So we have to get around to asking ourselves, what is the source behind it? What are the occupants? And what is the best evidence that might indicate whatever that reality may be? And, something that keeps coming back to me in my mind is Travis Walton. You've met and talked with Travis over the years.
Yes, many times.
I have had lunch with him. I've sat there and talked with Travis, at after hours parties. More often than not, we don't talk about UFOs or his experience. But I went back and I listened to him the other night in an interview, just going really deeply into detail about what happened. And I'm thinking, if this is all a true, real experience that he had, and as far as claims of abductions and things like that go, I'm pretty skeptical of the majority of them. But as far as those go, there is more that supports it. Again, as far as people who were additional witnesses who actually saw him run up under an aircraft that they couldn't identify. He was actually missing for several days. If what he's saying is true, it really raises some interesting questions about what this phenomenon may actually represent. And so I keep coming back to that and going, we're going to have to get back around at some point to recognizing there is some sort of control behind the phenomenon. These things don't just show up, unless they're like Transformers, and the UFOs themselves are actually autonomous AI, that they are actual intelligences themselves. Who knows? But again, I don't know. And so I hear Haim Eshed saying all these things about, all these crazy ideas. There is a part of me, Jimmy, that goes, well, I don't know. I have to at least entertain the possibility. I don't think it's likely, but you never know.
I'm impressed that you just watched me sneeze on the air. The audience didn't hear it. I hit the mute button in time. You didn't skip a beat. Well done, man. You just
That's okay. I had to vamp for you, but man,
that was pretty good. But when Eshed makes this statement, and I feel another sneeze coming on, so if there is a silent break, you guys know what happened. When Eshed said, we are here because communicating with you because we are trying to figure out the fabric of space. It's like, wait a minute. You got here. Yeah. I think you've already got that part figured out. You're talking to the wrong race of space beings if you're trying to get the answers to the fabric of space. So the comparisons to Hellier, I think, are valid in that it feels to me that Eshed is just doing some armchair research on the net, and he's just repeating what he has read that has been out there in ufology for decades. This isn't anything new.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes, too, about the fact that it was initially published in the Hebrew language. Was there any kind of translational issue?
Yes.
Something that he said, maybe he phrased it as, take, for example, a hypothetical situation where we have a galactic federation, and then when that gets, quoted selectively and translated only in part, again, everybody runs with it. I'm also seeing in the article from NBC the other day about this, though, where they're noting, Sue Goff, a spokesperson for the Pentagon, declined to comment. Poor girl, she's getting it from every side, man.
And what's the danger that we have here where there are so many in the UFO community that needs confirmation from those on high? Right. And something like this comes out and it is immediately taken as gospel. Right. And they are running with this. What's the danger in that?
Okay. You raise a really interesting point right there, Jimmy. The fact that people seem to have to think that it has to come from government or, again, from some person in an official capacity for it to be of significance. Again, this is a big issue I have, and that may sound very strange coming from a guy, you know, who is one of the co-founders of the Debrief. And we just dropped these articles, of course, with, you know, again, with Tim's piece being one of the most significant updates on the current state of affairs with regard to the UAP task force.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I have full respect for government efforts to try and solve this phenomenon or to study and assess it. I would like for them to do that. You know, Neil deGrasse Tyson, when he appeared on CNN in 2017, was saying the same thing. I'm an astronomer. I look at stars. I don't look at this. Whatever this is, I hope the government's looking at it. Again, I share that contention. But what worries me a little is that, again, if what the photograph we've discussed earlier ends up being, you know, a balloon, as I suspect it could be, you know, does that necessarily convey that government is the best in terms of being well equipped at trying to study this? A thought that has crossed my mind a few times. Would there be benefit to having civilian UFO researchers who are well read on aspects of the historical context, scientific applications, you know, scientific studies, current and past, you know, sociological implications, cultural aspects related to all of this, psychological components? You know, would it be of benefit to have civilian, but qualified civilians who might be able to work in an advisory capacity, you know, have them help government officials who, again, somebody who's been in a, you know, a position where they are a counterintelligence officer, you know, and they may have served in Iraq or Afghanistan, and all of a sudden they have a desk job at the Pentagon, you know, this a hypothetical situation, but again, they find themselves being handed a folder and saying, figure out what these things are. My point is that individual in that scenario may not be a UFO researcher or a person who's even per se interested in this, but they find themselves in a very unique and precarious situation where they're being asked, figure out something that no one in history has been able to solve. Here's a folder, you know? Again, I would hope they would have more resources on hand, but if they don't, and if they aren't necessarily someone who is well read on the subject, they have a limited amount of time and resources in terms of getting up to speed on it, should the public be prepared to accept the other possibility that maybe government is not going to be the source of some grand disclosure or something like that, that we should be very careful about putting officialdom up on some pedestal and expecting that they have all the answers. I have often wondered if the sum total of the collective knowledge of the UFO community on the civilian side of things might not far exceed anything really that government has. Now, I'm sure that there are some things government has about this topic that have, you know, this hasn't been released to the public, and, you know, we're in the dark about. But I mean, would that, however significant it is, outweigh everything that we've already collected over decades of civilian research, and some of that actually drawing from government sources like Blue Book? I'm just not so sure that it would.
Well, you bring up a good point, because everything that Shed said in these statements were each statement was missing one key thing. He didn't say, I saw the evidence of an underground base that we have on Mars. He didn't say, I was part of the negotiations with Israel and the United States with the Galactic Federation. He didn't say this. He didn't say, I have seen the evidence that I was part of this. No, everything was suggested in the third person, right? And so it fell short of that. But the UFO community doesn't want to look, you know, further into this and try to use some discernment. Instead, it's just this watershed moment that we've got a government official coming out saying that we're hanging out with ET. And I just find that very, very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I mean, there are several ways one could interpret it. But again, I think, you know, you point out, I don't want the UFO community to hate us, but I mean, in fairness, I will actually say that many people operating on Twitter who count themselves among the UFO community, they're fairly recent arrivals. A lot of them are. I mean, a lot of people really got interested in this, you know, once there was something to talk about. You know, blessed are those who were interested before there was all of this, you know, revelatory news. But again, my whole thing, Jimmy, I would love to see us get beyond, and I've told Tim and MJ this, we've had many lengthy conversations, the three of us, about this. We have to get to a point where we get beyond having to expect revelations in order to have a meaningful dialogue about UFOs. I think that the public has become, especially since 2017, but really it's been here, in our midst far longer than that. The public has been conditioned to expect revelations. We're going to have disclosure. They're going to tell us what happened at Roswell. Yeah, the UAP task force will release its report. Grand disclosures about ATIP, ALSAP, what have you. At some point we're going to have to realize that, when we run out of disclosures, when we run out of revelations, there's still going to be a phenomenon that we have not, put a finger on. We haven't solved it yet. What do we do when we get to the point where we're like, okay, we're going to try some unique interferometry and also spectroscopy this weekend, where we try to discern if we can figure out, if we can break apart some of the bandwidths of light, if, of course, this all is contingent on whether the phenomenon shows up, and it usually doesn't, but we're going to go out there and stand on a hillside and freeze and hope it does. That's not the fun side of ufology, is it? No, nobody wants to stand out there and freeze their butt off, waiting to see if something shows up. But let me tell you, if science is going to be applied to this, there's going to have to be some of that, right?
It has to be. And listen, Micah, I've had a lot of sightings, but I had two very significant sightings. I'm not going to get into the details now, but one, obviously, the green chrome balls. I saw that with 100, 150, 200 other people. We all witnessed it together. I went public, very public, on all of my media platforms discussing this. The other one was the beer can, which was a couple of years ago. Again, daytime sighting, 400, 500 foot tall object comes out. There it is. We all see it. I've got 20 or 30 witnesses. We all see it, and then it phased out and disappeared in the blue sky. I can't explain that, but let me say this. Not one media organization approached me. Not one government nothing, total silence. As credible as anything else and I'm talking about Fravor, anything else you want to mention. These two incidents happened with multiple witnesses. Nobody was concerned. And as credible as Fravor or Chad Underwood or anybody else that's going to come forward, that's great. And that's what led to the significance of those three videos. It was the pilot's testimony that supported that. And we turn around and we have these sightings, nothing, crickets. And the civilian side is just as important as anything else, Micah. It's a great point.
It certainly is. And again, you look at the years and years of research that, again, the late, great Stanton Friedman, good buddy of ours. In fact, you and I had, I think one time when we had dinner, he was there with us having dinner, in fact. But you think about research that guys like Stanton did and, that many today continue to do. Those civilian stories, to me, are far more interesting than the government stories. And again, I recognize why people ascribe such significance to the government side of things. But I mean, I don't know that they should necessarily be, they should not be placed in a category apart from, distinct from, and for some reason thereby and only thereby greater than significance that we append to the civilian sightings. A gentleman named Andy wrote to me a while back. He was a flight attendant on an aircraft that was an international flight flying out of Glasgow a number of years ago en route to the northern United States. He said that as they were flying along, he noticed a lot of the passengers looking out the windows of this passenger jet, and he had made some comment about what was going on outside, and a fella with a beard from Scotland with a thick accent turns and looks at him and says, "You tell us." And Andy comes over and he looks out one of the windows and he says, as they're flying over the Atlantic in the broad daylight of early morning, this massive black triangle with a light at each of the three corners. Does that sound familiar, especially in light of discussion about this purported photograph? He says this thing is traveling, I guess on a perpendicular course passing below them. And he said it seemed completely uninterested or oblivious to our presence. And he said it absolutely reshaped my perspective on reality. But again, when I hear stories like that, I'm thinking, that that might just give the Tic Tac a run for its money. So again, it being a government sighting, the Tic Tac and the 2004 Nimitz thing, I understand why people find that so fascinating. My gosh, you mean our military professionals, our government actually is, studying this, and they have had experiences involving this? A lot of people have, though. And again, we do need to, in addition to trying to get past revelations, we also need to recognize the civilian witnesses, their testimony, and the kinds of things they describe seeing, especially in circumstances like what Andy told me about. That is just as important. It's just as significant in moving toward a broader understanding and more widespread recognition, not only of the reality, but also the prevalence of the phenomenon.
So, first off, before we wind things down, great conversation tonight, and thank you for everything. But what's the future for the debrief? What are you guys working on, and how are you guys getting your stories?
Well, we're doing like any other journalist does. We are doing everything from original reporting on stories and subjects that are interesting to us. We'll also look at things that are happening in the media. For instance, with this big story about the Russian hack. Yes. Okay, that broke over the weekend. I reached out to a cybersecurity expert, and one who has actually been a consultant and has appeared on a lot of the daytime news stations and networks. And we quoted him and his perspectives on how we prevent this from happening in the future. And this has really been something we hope to try and do with the debrief. Even if we are commenting on timely things happening in the news, you heard the news, come check us out and get the rest of the story. Get the analysis, get the breakdown, get the debrief. I mean, what an actual debrief is once you come back in off the mission, you're debriefed, right? Come by, stop in, have your debrief. We've got a newsletter that goes out every week. It's written by yours truly. It's called the Intelligence Brief. That goes out on Thursdays, and you can sign up for that and also just get email updates from us right there at the website. But as far as the UFO stuff, Tim McMillan and I, we've got some things that we're working on together. All of us are individually working on various projects. Yes, there will be future UFO reporting. I have a few tricks up my sleeve as well. But again, we're just trying to raise the bar on things that interest us and also items that we don't think get enough proper coverage in the science, tech, and defense industry.
Yeah, congratulations, man. The debrief, I spent so much time over there over the last week when it was loading. It was when the story broke, and I'm trying to get on to the site. I'm trying to, and you guys were bombed, and that is fantastic. Yeah, that's what you want. You want to have your site crashing because everybody is heading there for the news. Thank you so much, Mike, and give my best to Tim and MJ. Those guys are absolutely fantastic, and the effort is much appreciated. Thank you so much, Micah.
Always good to talk with you, Jimmy.
Great to see you. And I can see Micah, you guys camp, but he looks great. Hey, what kind of socks do you have on?
Oh, gosh. What is it? The Johnston Murphy skeleton socks, I think. The game day socks, as I call them.
Micah Hanks. Thank you so much, Micah. Behave, and all my best to your family. You guys stay safe out there.
Take care. I want you at 100% next time I see you, okay?
It'll be soon. Micah Hanks. Now, all of Micah's links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. Of course, micahhanks.com and thedebrief.org. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll come back and open up the phone line. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
Here, and you are listening to my boy Jimmy Church on jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at jimmychurchradio.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hello, my name is Billy Carson, and I am a best-selling author and the founder of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Together with my team, we have built an all-new conscious streaming TV platform designed with every family member in mind. If you have ever wanted to travel the world and attend lectures and workshops from your favorite speakers but weren't able to, look no further. ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. There are dozens of workshops and lectures from speakers you know and love. We have also included amazing categories to assure that your consciousness is entertained and elevating on a daily basis. Amazing interviews, ancient history, ascension knowledge, wisdom teachings, documentaries, conspiracies, mysteries, health and fitness, conscious cooking, meditations, finance, yoga, and so much more. To start your free trial on any mobile device or computer, surf to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's Forbidden Knowledge with the number 4, ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Again, visit ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
The older we get, the more important it is to stay active and healthy. I exercise regularly, eat right, but recently some new aches and pains have really put a cramp in my routine. A good friend recently told me about Angioprim. She said Angioprim is the original liquid oral chelation supplement, helping people since 2003. Chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, calcium, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages and lead to unexplained pain. Research shows the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that may help promote good cardiovascular health. After a few weeks of taking Angioprim, my pain was gone. Now I'm back and more physically active than ever. Find out more. Go to angioprim.com, ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim right now, 954-882-7221. That's 954-882-7221.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRAradio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Thank you, Micah Hanks. TheDebrief.org. You need to go check that out. It's a great website. Tim McMillan, MJ Benias, Micah Hanks getting it done over at The Debrief. And they've got a lot of great writers over there. And I like the direction that they're taking. Pretty cool. And he's right. The name, The Debrief, is perfect. So go and check it out, thedebrief.org. What a great conversation tonight. I've opened up the phone line, 747-228-2051, 747-228-2051. And if you are on hold, stay right there. I will get to the phone calls in just a bit. Now, here's a couple of takeaways that I had with the conversation tonight, and let me just say this: I am not doing well. I'm operating at 50%, but when I have a conversation like I do with Micah, I am energized, and I got through the show tonight, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the week. But what a great conversation. And Micah's take, going back to the photograph, that went far and wide last week because of the debrief and Tim McMillan and his article. Micah feels that it's a balloon in the image. I'm not going there. I can't, and I can't go there because of the altitude. And I can't judge about the size of the object. There's nothing to triangulate there. And without the testimony directly from the pilot, we may never know the size of the object or what he saw and movement and things. But from my eyes, suggests that this object is maybe a mile away. It's very hard to judge distances like that, but that's what my eyes say to me. And I'm the one that normally goes in full skeptic mode until there's something else here. There's another thing that we didn't discuss tonight, and that is in the security reports, the two that have been circulated, they are suggesting it's a cube, right? Cube. And when you look at the object, I don't see cube. So I'm thinking that the pilot has said something in hit, because I believe that he flew around the object and he had another way of looking at it. I don't see cube. So what is it that the pilot saw? That's another aspect of this. And especially if you go back to some of the testimony from the pilots and crew members from the Nimitz and Roosevelt encounters that discussed cubes and a cube within a cube. Very, very interesting. So I don't know. We are going to see what we are going to see in an object that is been captured in an image like this. Very interesting. I trust Micah's opinion. I really do. But I can't go Mylar party balloon. Not yet. And we need to hear from this pilot. With that, 747-228-2051. Let's go to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi, Jimmy. Hi, Rita. Hi, Faders. This is Rhea. How are you?
Hi, Rhea. How are you tonight?
I'm doing all right. I really want to wish everybody a happy new moon before the winter solstice.
Coming up. And also on the 21st, Saturn and Jupiter, I believe, are going to align. Ooh. Yeah. I was looking at Saturn and Jupiter before the show tonight, and they're getting closer, right? It's really weird. They're just going to continue to do that until they're on top of each other on the 21st. And strange date for that to happen on, too, by the way, the 21st of December. Mm. So there you go.
Things just keep aligning mathematically, right?
Yep, absolutely. What's on your mind tonight?
Calling just to respond to what you were just talking about, and also to plug a hashtag that I put out there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that, given that the monoliths are like an art installation, going along with that theory, I think that it is a spacecraft doing an art installation of ironic proportions. It's made itself to look like a big Mylar balloon. And I don't know.
Let's back up for a second. So the monoliths, I did post the recent count. I think it's about 50 have been seen around the world. So you're suggesting that the monoliths are an alien art exhibit put on for us?
I think it could be just put on with technology that we're not dealing with on the daily, and whether it's, some human alien or, other sort of way to put those words together, collaboration. I sense it has to do with the changes in the sun that are happening and some type of stabilization of the planet. Because I believe that forces are benevolent, and even though we're building our sandcastles down here, I think there's something beyond us that we're going to understand soon.
Yeah, I don't know what the sources are for these monoliths, but I think it's cool, and I totally endorse it. Let's just say it's
so much fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Let's just say it's just artists from around the world building their own version of the monolith, going out there, popping it down. I enjoy the conversation, even if it's something that simple, right? I'm cool with it.
Yeah, and meanwhile, all the Yeti druids are just doing ceremony at them,
and what's
in the
wrong,
middle of the night.
And what's wrong with that? Nothing.
That's beauty.
Yeah, I think it's totally cool. Now, what did you make of this photograph that this F18 pilot took with this object out of the window? What are you seeing when you look at these images or the image?
I see something very playful. I see the pilot seeing something and taking a picture of it, and that something being something for that being that the spaceship was interacting with, the pilot taking the picture. And so that's what I think it has to do with, and I think it was just simply like a Batman thing.
Well, yeah.
And Batman's a hero, right? But it's ironic that there's a Mylar balloon that floats up and creates garbage, right?
There's something that I'm very conflicted with, and that is this. An F-18 is flying pretty fast. Even if it's flying slow, it's flying fast. Yeah. And at that altitude, I find the odds of a Mylar balloon being at 35,000 feet and a pilot flying that close to it and is able to grab his camera and photograph a Mylar balloon.
Because the stability of the image would be so difficult to get at that speed.
And it's crystal clear.
It would be just a one in a squillion. Yeah.
Right. I'm at odds with that. It just
the balloon's too big. It's too big.
It's too big
to be just a balloon. But I feel like it really is that thing. Like you look at it and you can see the Batman on it, and I just think, what if they're just playing with us?
I don't see
having a little fun.
I don't see the Batman on it though. And it may it just may be a Mylar Batman balloon at 35,000 feet. Okay, it just may be a tiny little Mylar balloon very close to the aircraft, so it looks big. It just may be that. If that pilot
the perspective
is
switched,
but how lucky is that pilot to be flying past it at 300 miles an hour, right? 400 miles an hour. And that thing isn't a blur. It's perfectly in focus, and he grabs it with a cell phone camera.
Right. It's that moment where two atoms,
it's a 1 in a billion.
Look at each other in space.
Yeah, it's a 1 in a billion, but let's just say that's what it is. Okay. All right. We need the pilot to come out and say that. I'm just trying to say this in the most
like
honest
that moment
way.
in Harry Potter where you think of like something and it appears before you, where the chest had stuff in it.
Well, but how would it be that these 3-letter agencies are investigating UAPs, and this image comes into their circle, taken by an Air Force pilot, Navy pilot, whatever, and they don't dismiss it as a balloon? How is it that they are taking it in another direction? What is it that this pilot said in his report that accompanied that image that this wasn't just dismissed? How is it not just dismissed? It's just a Mylar balloon. Why are they having a conversation about it being something else? That's the problem that I have here.
What did it show up on the other registers, and what were the other gauges saying about this area?
Yeah, because I am sure that somebody contacted the pilot and said, okay, what is it that you saw? Well, it was a Mylar balloon. I photographed a Mylar balloon. It's pretty cool, right? Isn't that the end of the story? How does it go from Mylar balloon to UAP in a security report?
Yes.
That's all
and
that
if
I'm
it's
saying.
only happening because we have a Space Force, then that's just like, that's comedy unfolding we don't want to have.
Yeah, because if we go back to Christopher Mellon, and I brought this up tonight with Micah, if we go back to Christopher Mellon and his flamboyant statement that he made with the TTSA announcement and the selling of stock, and they do that live presentation on the internet, and he shows a picture of a Mylar balloon and says, what is this? Is this alien technology? It's clearly not ours. So what is it? And that's what TTSA is about. We're going to go investigate this. And the point that I made back then is, who are the brainiacs at TTSA that didn't know that that was a Mylar balloon before they flashed the image across the world, suggesting that this was alien technology and that we're going to get to the bottom of this? Who are the brainiacs that didn't investigate this image before they posted it online? You can't do that. Well, if that is the case with that, didn't we learn lessons, right? The UFO community does not want to hear about weather balloons. We don't want to hear it, right? And TTSA went and made that mistake. Christopher Mellon said that statement. Now, here we are in 2020. We've got another image. It's an F18 pilot of all things, like Dave Fravor was. And we've got this image, and we are looking at it. Isn't the intelligence community the least bit aware of making a mistake like that again? And this leaks out into the public like it did. Is it a Mylar balloon or not? We can't keep making these mistakes. Who are the intelligence officials investigating this stuff that they cannot determine if this is a Mylar party balloon like it was originally with Chris Mellon? And here we are once again in 2020 dealing with the exact same subject.
Yeah. I mean, the word disclosure is just, it's so painfully laughable in our community, and it's always like almost there. But the world that I personally live in shows that there's no way that we are alone. And there's so many people that are experiencing otherness and high strangeness every day. And, it's just, the dialogue is always just meant to silence anything that starts to sound potentially real and truthful, and just to put it off into the pseudoscience, insane, can't quite tell, never gonna know.
And Micah brought up a really good point. And while I have you, let me ask you this, where Micah had said that too many in the UFO community are depending on an official government disclosure, that's where it's coming from, and we're depending on Washington for this. Is that dangerous? Should we look equally at the civilian side and the witnesses and the things that we have seen when it comes to disclosure, and not put all our eggs in one basket?
Well, the prime message that unfortunately both sides of the disclosure conversation continue to say is that it is dangerous for our population to understand what's really happening. And that is the most obvious response of the deep state. And so whenever someone says, like that off the cuff, it's just like harmful for society to know this. No. It's harmful for us to not know. And there are people with stories who are in the minority, but the stories repeat throughout history. And, there's beings around us. We're not alone. And it's just silly that it's not out in the open. And it just is this diabolical plot that we've all co-created, together. God love us.
Well, do you feel that we are right on the edge, of something very big breaking, whether it comes from the government or something else?
Most assuredly. I mean, I go back into a journal, and in the year 2012, someone asked me when disclosure was, and I had an automatic 2021.
Really?
If it's not by then, and then it's a problem, because there's things like that should be happening right now, but because of the election stuff, it's just the war that's been going on that's supposed to turn into the fake alien war is turning into something else because enough of information has gotten out. So
yeah, you might be right there. You might be right. There is. I brought up that point a few months ago, in that if something was going to break right now, it's going to get lost in all of the other drama and headlines that are happening, right? And these headlines that keep getting bigger and bigger every day. When I said that 6 months ago, I said that last year, 2 years ago, where I was bringing up this point that how is it possible that we can top today's headlines tomorrow? But I guarantee you that it will. And these headlines of the last 4 years, 5 years have gotten so ginormous that any news could break important. It's not going to surface. It's going to be hidden. And even if it does, it's going to get forgotten in a very short news cycle. And that, unfortunately, is where we are today, where it's got to be big news, right? It's got to be huge.
Yeah, it's got to be big, and it's got to be about social movement. It's got to be about people's core values, personal identification. It really, things have to be on that level. And people don't want to identify as being lower on the totem pole than we actually are.
And that is also one of the biggest fears, and I brought up this, and I know it's a strange way to look at things, but you just mentioned it, and it's this. If we find out, right, if we are told by the government we're alone in the universe, we've never made ET contact, that's it. That is the truth. That is a scarier proposition for this planet than telling us that we're not alone in the universe.
Yeah.
Right? If we find out that we're alone in the universe, then there's no reason. There's no reason to be nice to anybody. There's no reason to be nice to the planet. There isn't any reason to do anything. Let's just party. Let's just party. There's nothing to be hopeful for. If you tell everybody that we have made contact and that there's a reason to take care of this planet, there's a reason for us to exist, that is what the planet needs to hear. You don't want them. The other proposition about us being alone in the universe, that is much scarier.
Yes, it is really much scarier, and it's all the stuff we've been working on all these decades. We're getting away from war. We're imbibing peace, and we're trying to do that in our relationships and in all the choices that we make to do better. And there's in the 4 agreements, they say there's a poison in this world.
Well, and that's exactly it. Well, but that's exactly it.
Something funky going on.
Rhea, thank you for the phone call, and
many blessings.
What a great conversation. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Thanks. Yes, I just want to say #CTUP. That is #cloaked triangle UFO phenomenon. CTUP, CTUP. For those of you who see triangle ships out there that are cloaked, tag your vids. Love you guys.
I'll talk to you, Rhea. Thank you so much.
Okay, cheers, bye.
That's a great conversation right there. And I am look, if we're alone in the universe, if we are truly alone in the universe, then it's a 24-hour party over at our house. Let's just go. Let's just light these candles. I'm serious. There's just no reason to do anything. There's no reason to, that's it. That's it. Right? We clearly know that is not the case. And for us to move forward, not only as a country, but as friends and neighbors and as a planet, we need to know these things. That's it. So we can have a plan. We know where we're going, and there's a reason to be here, and we can move forward, right? And we could forget about these borders and these issues and the divisiveness that we have on this planet. And that's it. And that's the only reason to look at things. Am I right? Of course I am. If we tomorrow as a planet decided to start building a starship as a planet to build and to go somewhere, we have a plan. Everything would disappear. Everything on this planet would disappear. I'm serious. All right. And with that, tomorrow night, John Burroughs and James Worrow are going to join us. The new book is going to be released on Wednesday, December 16th. So that goes on tomorrow night. And the new book is called Weaponization of an Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. This is coming out right on here we are, December of 2020, the 40th anniversary of the Rendlesham Forest incident. Huge night for the show tomorrow night. You're not going to want to miss that. Then, of course, Wednesday night, Billy Carson is going to be here discussing his new book, Woke Doesn't Mean Broke. Thursday night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. What a great conversation tonight. Everybody head over and check out thedebrief.org. It's a great website. And, yeah, it seems like it came out of nowhere. But MJ, Tim, and Micah have got a good thing going on, so go and check it out. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camarion. Show is produced by Hill J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast owned and copyrighted 2020 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. That cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What a great night tonight. We got a great week in front of us. Until tomorrow night with John Burroughs and James Worrow, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I want everybody to be safe. Fade to Black.